Hey there, friends. Welcome to a chilling tale that's bound to keep you on the edge of your seat. Tonight, I'm taking you to a remote village where a haunting howl pierces the night, growing louder with each setting sun. As shadows loom and fear spreads, the villagers face a terrifying mystery that could threaten them all. But first, I have something special just for you. If you're looking to shed those extra pounds while you sleep, click the link in the description below to learn more about an amazing weight loss dietary supplement. Now, let's dive into the dark world of the distant howl. Don't forget to comment where you're listening from, and subscribe to keep the spine-tingling stories coming. Every night, as I nestled under my heavy blanket, I heard it, a distant howl slicing through the air, chilling my bones. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on me. But as days turned into weeks, the sound grew sharper, echoing across our quiet village. My heart raced as I listened, imagining the creature it could belong to: a wolf, a ghost, or something even worse. The villagers began to talk. Have you heard it? The howl? They whispered, voices quaking with fear. Some claimed to have seen shadows lurking in the trees, eyes glimmering like stars, watching us. Livestock began to vanish. A goat here, a chicken there. We could feel the unease wrapping around us like a thick fog. I felt it too, an unsettling tension in the crisp night air. One evening, after the sun dipped below the hills, I decided to investigate. I crept outside, clutching a lantern that flickered like my wavering courage. The howl pierced the silence again, more haunting than before, filling the chilly night with dread. I took a deep breath and moved towards the woods, each step echoing my pounding heart. The woods were dark, branches clawing at the air as though trying to pull me back. The howling got closer and chills ran down my spine. What was out there? I could almost see the creature lurking just beyond the light of my lantern, its breath heavy and menacing. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes sent me jumping back. "Who's there?" I called, my voice barely louder than a whisper. But no answer came, just the howl. It rose again, a sound so chilling it felt alive, hungry. I knew I had to return home, but my feet felt stuck to the ground, holding me captive. The villagers began to gather, adrenaline pumping as we shared our frightening encounters. Each story was worse than the last, strange footprints leading away from our homes, whispers in the night that sent shivers down our spines. We wondered, could we survive against whatever was hunting us? Just then, the howl returned, sharper and more desperate. I looked around at my friends, their faces pale under the moonlight as realization sunk in. We weren't just living in a village anymore. We were prey in a deadly game, and the stakes were our very lives. I felt the air grow still, as if the world around us was holding its breath. The howl had transformed from a distant fear into a direct threat, echoing through the trees like a call to action. I turned to the group of villagers gathered around, their faces twisted with uncertainty. We all knew we had to do something, but what? Fear gripped my heart, urging me to retreat to my safe little home. Yet deep down, a different feeling stirred, curiosity mixed with dread. I wanted to know what was out there, close enough to haunt our nights. We formed a sort of pact, a shaky alliance bound by our collective fear. We should stick together, one of the villagers suggested, her voice trembling. So, we cautiously made our way further into the woods, lanterns flickering in the thickening darkness. Shadows danced around us, twisting and morphing with every gust of wind. I like to think we were brave, but in truth, we were terrified. Suddenly, there was a loud snap like a twig breaking underfoot. We all froze, hearts pounding in unison. I turned to the source of the noise, squinting into the blackness, trying to make sense of the movement. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Nods answered me, but they were barely visible in the dim light. The others gripped their lanterns tighter. I could see the fear in their eyes. Then, in the distance, I spotted a pair of glowing eyes peeking through the trees. They were unlike anything I'd ever seen, reflecting the light of our lanterns in a way that felt more sinister than anything else. My breath hitched. I wanted to turn and run, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground, my body frozen in terror. "Is that it?" I managed to utter, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced as the eyes blinked and the creature moved closer, revealing long, bony limbs and a dark silhouette that sent waves of dread coursing through me. It looked almost human, but twisted, elongated in a way that felt wrong. A shiver traveled down my spine as it let out a low growl that resonated deep within my chest. We all backed away slowly, the instinct to flee battling with the need to understand the horror unfolding before us. Then it happened. The howl erupted again, this time louder and closer, mingling with the creature's growls. My pulse quickened as panic surged. Were we its next victims? I wanted to scream, to alert the villagers, but I could only manage a choked gasp. We turned, all of us moving in unison, scrambling through the underbrush in a desperate flight. My heart thudded wildly in my chest as my feet pounded the ground, branches tugging at my clothes, pulling me back. Suddenly, I tripped and fell, the world spinning around me. I landed hard on the ground, pain shooting through my ankle. "Help!" I cried out, hoping someone would hear me, that we wouldn't all be swallowed by the darkness. I glanced back, and just then, I caught a glimpse of it. The creature was closer now, the eyes glowing brighter, a twisted grin spreading across its face. "Don't look back!" someone shouted from the distance. With a surge of courage, I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain in my ankle, and ran as fast as I could. We were all bolting now, panic driving our movements. Adrenaline coursed through me as I focused on the dim light of the village ahead, our only sanctuary from the unholy terror pursuing us. When we finally burst into the village square, breathless and wide-eyed, I realized we weren't just fighting against fear. We were battling something alive, something that thrived on our terror. Nobody spoke. We just stood there, bewildered, the sanctuary of our homes suddenly feeling like fragile shells in the face of an unseen predator. In the days that followed, the howling continued, but it felt different now, more purposeful, as if the creature was savoring the fear it spread through our village. More livestock vanished, and shadows seemed to lurk around every corner. I noticed strange footprints outside my window, cloven and deep, leading away into the forest. Each morning brought a growing sense of dread. We were being watched, hunted, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it came for us. One night, as I lay in bed, the howl became unbearable, a sound like a wretched chant, echoing through the streets. I got up, feeling that undeniable pull to understand. I slipped on my shoes, heart racing, and quietly made my way to the village square again. Other villagers were there too, drawn by the howl. We exchanged terrified glances, silently communicating our fears as the moon cast an eerie glow on our frightened faces. Suddenly, the howling stopped, replaced by an unnerving silence that enveloped us. My instincts told me to run, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. What would happen next? Would it reveal itself to us? Then, out of the darkness emerged a figure, a woman, or at least she looked human at first, pale and gaunt. Her hair hung like weeds around her face, casting shadows over her eyes. The villagers gasped as she stepped forward, her movements slow and deliberate. The howls began again, softer now, almost like a lullaby that sent chills creeping down my spine. "Help us," she whispered, her voice wavering like a candle flame. I tried to step back, but my legs felt heavy, as if the darkness was holding me down. "It's not what you think," she continued, glancing over her shoulder as if fearing the creature would appear. "We're all trapped here in its web of nightmares. You must believe me." More screams punctured the night air as another howl shattered the silence. The figure's expression morphed into one of sheer terror. "It's coming. You must go," she urged, desperate. And just like that, the atmosphere thickened with tension, knowing the creature was close. I exchanged fearful glances with the other villagers, our eyes wide, faces pale under the moonlight. What do we do now? Hide? Fight? The answer felt lost in the shadows that danced around us. My heart raced as dread settled deep within me. Something horrific was lurking nearby, an unseen presence looming just beyond the edge of our lantern's light. We had to uncover the truth. The woman's eyes were wild with fear, and I felt a chill run down my spine as I stepped closer, drawn in despite the instinct to run. "You don't understand the danger you're in," she insisted, trembling as she turned toward the dark woods behind her. The howls echoed again, this time sounding like they were close, far too close for comfort. My heart raced as I glanced back at the gathering villagers, their faces a blend of confusion and terror. Were we truly prepared to believe her? As the sounds of the night deepened, the lantern light flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and claw at the ground, reaching for us. The woman staggered back slightly, eyes darting toward the trees. "It's feeding off your fear," she cried, her voice thick with urgency. "That's why it grows stronger with each howl. If we don't confront it, we'll all disappear one by one." As I listened to her frantic words, another howl shattered the night, a sound so close it felt like nails scraping on glass. I gathered my courage and approached her. "Tell us what to do. How do we stop it?" I urged, my voice firm even as my insides quaked. She looked at me with a mix of hope and despair. "We have to go back to the place where it first summoned the howl," she revealed, pointing toward the gaping woods where the shadows seemed to writhe. "That's where the nightmare starts. Only then can we expose it to the light and break its hold." My heart skipped a beat at the thought of going back in, but something about her words resonated with me. I felt the need to protect my home, my people. "We can't let it take us one by one," I whispered, turning to the others who had been listening intently. "We have to face this thing together." With hesitant agreement, we formed a small group, moving toward the edge of the darkened woods. The lantern light felt weak against the thick darkness engulfing us, but we forged ahead, determination battling against our fear. I could hear our breath harmonizing, a mix of quiet whispers and shaky exhales, as we entered the trees. The further we walked, the thicker the air became, heavy with dread. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, yet I pushed forward, each step echoing with the howls that continued to taunt us in the distance. Every rustle in the underbrush made my heart leap. Was it the creature moving closer? The shadows danced, and I felt as if they were watching us, waiting for the moment to strike. Time seemed to stretch as we made our way deeper into the forest. The witching hour was upon us, the world outside fading as we plunged into this realm of nightmares. The howls crescendoed, wrapping around us like a sickening embrace. A sense of urgency built in my chest. I knew we were running out of time. Finally, we reached a clearing where the trees bent as if submitting to some invisible force. In the center stood an ancient stone, gnarled and twisted, its surface marred by symbols I couldn't comprehend, symbols that felt alive. I stepped closer, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I could almost hear whispers emanating from the stone, brushing against my ears like dry leaves scuttling across the ground. "What is this place?" someone whispered behind me, breaking the silence. I turned to see fear etched across the faces of my companions. The woman stepped forward, reaching out to touch the stone, and as her fingers brushed against its surface, a shudder rippled through the air. The howls crescendoed again, raw and unearthly, seeming to pour from the stone itself. It was as if the creature was awakening, fueled by our presence. I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, sending a wave of panic surging through us. "We have to do this now," I shouted, desperation tightening my voice as I stepped closer. "We need to confront it." Collectively, we joined hands around the stone, preparing for whatever was about to unfold. The strange symbols began to glow, illuminating the clearing in an eerie light. The air thickened, charged with energy. I could feel the weight of something ancient and malevolent pressing down on us, as if the forest was alive, pushing against our very existence. The howls won their fight against the silence, transforming from terrifying cries into a chorus of anguished screams. The ground quaked again, and as we stood there, locked together, I caught a glimpse of movement within the shadows, something vast and dark, weaving through the trees. The air became thick with a foul smell, musky and earthy, like old decay. My heart pounded louder in my chest, every instinct warning me to run, but the desire to protect my village kept me rooted to the spot. "We have to chant," the woman cried, her voice rising above the noise around us. "We must summon the light." With fear gripping my throat, I joined her, yelling words I didn't understand, my voice trembling as I joined the others in a frantic rhythm. The stone beneath our feet pulsed, responding to our fear and our determination. A blinding light erupted from the symbols, cutting through the darkness around us, and I saw the creature. Its form was massive, twisted and grotesque, emerging from the shadows. It was covered in matted fur and dripping with an inky darkness that coiled off its body like smoke. Its eyes, those terrible, terrible eyes, were brimming with hunger, and it let out a howl that echoed through the very marrow of my bones, rattling my soul. As the light engulfed us, I could feel hope mingling with despair. Could we drive this beast away? Would we merely attract its attention? I could sense the fear radiating from every villager beside me, combining our energies against the beast. The howl turned into a screech, and it lunged forward, fangs bared, the air thick with terror. "Keep going! Don't stop!" I shouted, forcing my legs to move in a rhythm that echoed through the clearing. We pulled together, drawing strength from one another, and the chant grew louder, filling the space with intent and fury. The light pulsated brighter, and for a moment, I thought I could see the creature flinch back. It was working, but just as hope surged inside me, the ground trembled violently, and the shadow lunged again, closer this time. I felt a current of fear threatening to consume me as darkness swarmed, closing in on our circle like a tightening noose. The howls morphed into wailing, a guttural sound that chilled my blood. And then I saw it. The creature's form flickered, revealing glimpses of something once human. Despair flooded over me. Was it truly just a monster? Or was it a soul trapped within, seeking vengeance from its own demise? I shivered, torn between fear for our lives and sympathy for whatever was lost. As the howling intensified, I clung to the light stronger, urging my voice to rise with the group. With a final, desperate push, we chanted louder, pouring our hopes and fears into the pulsating light, and I prayed it would be enough. But the shadows grew heavier, pressing against us, suffocating us in darkness. The howl pierced through the air once more, echoing the anguish of all the tormented souls, and I couldn't tell anymore if it was the creature or my own heart screaming for salvation. The shadows closed tighter around us, and I felt a sense of drowning in that dark weight pressing against my chest. The wailing filled my ears, mixing with the desperate pounding of my heart. I could almost see the creature shifting in the darkness, its hulking form writhing like a serpent caught in agony. Thorns of fear buried deep in me as the chanting faltered for a moment, uncertainty washing over the group. "No! Keep going!" I shouted, pulling air into my lungs and forcing my voice to rise above the chaos. I could see the faces of my companions, each reflecting fear and resolve. We owed it to ourselves to push past our terror, to break this cycle of despair. Together, we needed to summon all the strength we had left. With renewed focus, I joined the rhythm again, channeling my breath, lending my voice to the growing power of our chant. The light from the stone pulsed angrily in reaction, illuminating the clearing with a blinding white that cut through the creeping shadows. I felt moments when my own strength wavered, but the unity of our voices held me steady. That's when I heard it, a deep, guttural growl emerging from the creature, vibrating through the very ground we stood on. It was responding to us, fueled by the energy we were unleashing. I could see its eyes burning with fury, and it lunged forward again, the air thick with its rancid breath, stale and damp like something long dead. It felt as if the shadows themselves were trying to swallow us whole, a blanket of darkness demanding silence and submission. As the howling returned, now coupled with a sinister laughter that seemed to mock us. I could feel despair clawing at my resolve. Focus, I urged the group, afraid we would lose our cohesion. We can't let it take us. Each word felt like a lifeline, pulling us back from the brink of hopelessness, reminding us of our purpose. The chanting surged again, and the stone began to shake violently beneath my feet. It felt like a living thing, full of power and dread. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted in the clearing, and I shielded my eyes against the brilliance. In that moment, visions flooded my mind, fractured images of the woods, my village, and fluttering shadows of all those who had come before us, lost in the grip of this creature. I gasped, staggering back as flashes of reality intertwined with the moments of despair. The haunting cries of our missing livestock, the vacant eyes of villagers that had vanished. It all melded together, painting a picture of understanding. This creature thrived on the pain it caused, the fear it instigated. With renewed fury, I gripped my companion's hands tighter, unity wrapping around us like a shield. Channel your energy. Think of our loved ones, our home. We will fight for them, I screamed as we raised our voices again, and the light pulsed a furious beat, throwing beams of energy into the surrounding darkness. The creature howled in frustration, a cacophony of rage that made the very air shudder. I could feel the ground beneath us vibrating with its pain, but we pressed on, our chant growing more powerful. The shadows pulled back slightly, revealing glimpses of movement, but my focus remained on the light. It now swirled above us, a beacon cutting through the oppressive darkness. The creature's form twisted and shifted, becoming more grotesque as it was forced to confront the growing luminosity. It let out a primal scream that felt like a knife slicing through the night, and the ground trembled violently. I teetered for a moment, struggling to maintain my balance as the energy in the clearing peaked, and the shadows screamed in agony, pushing back against the encroaching light. Suddenly, the stone erupted with a flash of raw power, the light blinding as it surged outward. I squinted against the brightness, feeling a rush of heat enveloping me. The howling stopped, an eerie quiet filling the air, almost deafening in its intensity. For a heartbeat, nothing moved, and we were suspended in that moment of sheer terror and hope. Then reality crashed back as the creature lunged once more, its fury palpable, ripping through what remained of the darkness. The momentum of the light met its shadows, and I felt a burst of energy radiate from my chest. "This ends here," I cried out, finding strength from the core of my fear, a defiance against the darkness that had plagued us for too long. As I let the words escape, an explosion of energy erupted from the stone, cascading across the clearing. The light wrapped around the creature like a net, illuminating the twisted form that struggled against it. I felt the surge of power we had all summoned, and for the first time, I sensed change in the energy flow, a transformation in the very fabric of the night. The creature howled again, but it was tinged with something else. Desperation, almost as if it were becoming unmoored from its own essence. The shadows began to pull back, retreating into the trees, dragging the creature further into the light's embrace. I could see faces formed within the shadows, fleeting yet familiar. The lost souls swirling around the creature, former villagers released from their torment, but not yet free. They hung around it like a dying flame, longing for release but trapped in the dark. My heart broke for them, even as I fought to drive away the monster. "Come to the light," I shouted, urging their spirits to break free, to reclaim their lives. The chant grew louder, resonating through the clearing, and with every push, the bonds of fear loosened. Suddenly, the ground erupted. A blinding shockwave of energy rippled through the trees, sending leaves spiraling like confetti. The creature writhed and screamed, and I could feel the shadows slipping away, desperately clawing at the remnants of its power. In that moment of clarity, I understood this was more than just a battle for our lives. It was a moment of reckoning, a confrontation with all the pain, all the loss that had echoed through our village. Tears pooled in my eyes as I chanted louder, pouring everything I had into the light, the love for my home, the hope for my friends. Then, an even brighter flash blinded me. I felt a rush of wind and warmth envelop me, lifting me off the ground as the barriers fell, and the darkness was consumed by the brilliance. I squeezed my eyes shut, letting the light engulf me, feeling finally free of the burden that had haunted me for so long. What happened next was unlike anything I could have imagined. As the light enveloped me, I felt a jolt of energy surge through my body, a rush like nothing I'd ever experienced before. In an instant, the shadows began to dissipate, and I found myself suspended in a radiant glow. The howling faded to a whisper, giving way to a strange silence filled with the distant echoes of lost souls. I opened my eyes to a scene that felt surreal, like a dream that straddled reality. I looked around, the clearing now bathed in an ethereal light that seemed to pulse with life. The faces of my companions flickered in and out of view, their expressions a mix of awe and terror. Every breath I took felt charged, vibrating with the energy of the moment, but there was still an undercurrent of fear lurking deep inside me. Something was still not right, and I could sense it lurking just beyond the light. Then I noticed the creature. It wasn't gone. It had transformed. The swirling shadows that once loomed like a terrifying giant were shrinking, writhing like a smoke-filled serpent trying to escape a trap. It was smaller now, but its rage was palpable, thrumming like a drum in the stillness. I could see the twisted form thinning, but its eyes remained fierce, burning with an intensity that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I took a cautious step forward, urging my friends to do the same. "We can't let it escape," I said, my voice a whisper, but filled with determination. The light still pulsed around us, but I could feel its influence waning as the creature fought against its grasp. I wasn't sure how long this temporary truce would last. The energy felt fragile, and I understood the need to act quickly. Tension surged as I called upon everything left inside me, encouraging my companions to hold strong to our chant. "Together, push it back," I shouted, wanting to ignite the fire that had brought us this far. The shadows quivered against the light, trembling as we formed a circle around what remained of its essence. The creature recoiled, letting out a noise that was half a snarl and half a cry, an echo of pain that twisted deep within me. Its form flickered, and for just a moment, I thought I caught a glimpse of its past. Horrifying visions flashed through my mind, memories of fear, abandonment, and betrayal. Was this creature born from the shadows of our own despair? Did we each carry a piece of its darkness within us? "No!" I shouted, trying to shake away the memories that threatened to consume me. I couldn't let that ideology take root in my mind. It is our fear that fuels this thing. I realized that the very essence of what it was had been formed from the darkness we allowed to linger in our lives. The villagers who had disappeared, had they too been taken by their own shadows? Suddenly, the howls grew louder again, disturbed by the shift in energy. The creature's form twisted violently, and it jerked toward us, as if trying to escape its bounds. I could feel the ground begin to tremble beneath my feet, echoing the turmoil within the creature. The shadows crept closer once again, desperate to bind it back in their embrace. "Don't let go! Hold on tight!" I yelled, fighting against the fear creeping back into my veins. We had to face this together. It was our only chance. The chant flowed stronger from our lips, beating against the darkness like a war drum, pushing it back further and further. But the creature screamed again, this time in fury and despair, launching itself toward me. Time seemed to slow as I locked eyes with it, a deep, baleful gaze that threatened to strip away all my resolve. I felt a wave of terror wash over me, a chill that settled in the pit of my stomach. My chest felt hollow as if all the strength I had started to drain away. I was paralyzed for one terrible moment. Then I caught a glimpse of my friends, each of them standing firm, their expressions a mix of terror and determination. I could sense the energy we were creating, the collective strength that surged through us. It ignited a fire in my heart, shoving away the icy grip of fear. I took a breath and shouted again, pouring everything into my voice. You don't control us. We reclaim our light. You don't belong here. The words came out like a battle cry, rooting me into the ground, solidifying the purpose of our fight. The creature paused, caught by my proclamation. The furious eyes shifted, a hint of confusion flashing across its twisted features. Could it sense the power of our unity, the strength that came from fighting for each other, not against one another? Taking advantage of that moment, I reached deep inside, searching for that well of courage. Suddenly, the energy surged again, brighter than before, bursting forth like a wildfire. The chant reached its peak, sending waves of light crashing against the shadows, intertwining with the darkness in a furious cacophony of blinding brilliance. The creature shrieked louder, fragments of shadow breaking off to whip into the forest surrounding us, scattering into the night sky like lost souls. It thrashed against the light, nearly breaking free, but I could feel the stone responding to our collective chant, standing resolute against the darkness that threatened to reclaim it. As we held the chant steady, the shadows began to twist and contort around the creature, dragging it down deeper beneath the light. But then something changed. It no longer struggled. Instead, I felt a swell of deeper emotion radiating from its core. For a brief moment, I could see it more clearly. Something human glimmered in its eyes, a trace of sorrow and regret that wrapped around my heart like cold fingers. Could it sense that its time was coming to an end? Or perhaps it longed to break free from its torment, seeking salvation just like us? In that flicker of clarity, I realized that what we faced wasn't solely a creature of darkness. It was a reflection of the pain we all carried, the fears that had festered and grown unchecked. It was more than just a monster. It was a manifestation of our collective sorrow. I felt the urgency rise again, our voices lifting higher, swirling together to create a net that enveloped the creature. You can be free. Join the light. This is your chance, I urged, yearning for it to break through the despair that had wrapped its claws around its heart. With one final push, the energy burst forth, drowning out the remaining shadows. The creature wailed, a sound that resonated through the air, full of grief. Neither a monster nor a victim, but an echo of our shared fear. The creature wailed, a sound that resonated through the air, full of grief. Neither a monster nor a victim, but an echo of our shared fear. As its cries clawed at my heart, I began to see the full weight of its existence. In that heartbreaking scream, I felt its pain reverberate in my soul. It was as if time had stopped, and the chaotic battle around us faded into the background. What if this being, once human, was forever trapped in a cycle of suffering? The light began to shift in hue, a softening against the harsh brilliance we had sustained. I sensed that the creature was wavering, its form beginning to blur again. I couldn't help but wonder, did it want to escape, or did it seek something more profound? With my voice just above a whisper, I spoke from the depths of my heart. You are not alone. There's still a chance to be free. Let go of the darkness. My words weren't a mere command. They were a plea, a hope that perhaps we could save it as well as ourselves. My companions shifted, their expression as confused as mine, eyes darting between the creature and me. I took a gentle step forward, breaking our ring. The golden light pulsing from the stone danced around me, shielding me from the shadows. Slackening their grip, the creature flinched at my approach, but I could see a glimmer of something shifting within its dark depths, a flicker of awareness. Please, I urged, remember who you were, hoping the voice I carried could resonate with whatever humanity had been buried deep inside. You don't have to fight us. We can help you. The creature's form rippled, and I saw flashes of memories take shape within the shadows, moments of joy, love, laughter. They darted through the darkness like fireflies, illuminating the monster's transformation. In their wake, I could feel the air thickening with the creature's agony, as if recognizing what it once was. For an instant, I could feel its essence merging with ours, and the fear of losing myself sparked within me. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled as if reacting to my words, screaming in protest. An unseen force tugged at my heart, dragging me back. I staggered, and the voices of my friends echoed around me. "Stay with us?" But I was compelled to move forward, torn between fear and understanding. The air felt electric, charged with desperation and hope. I gazed into the creature's eyes, and they flickered back to dark, swirling pools of malice. But I could still sense the faintest sliver of clarity lurking beneath the surface. "We can reclaim what was lost," I said, focusing every ounce of my will into those words. In that moment, a piercing shriek erupted, and the ground beneath me began to tremble violently. The shadows started swirling, unraveling as they lashed out like desperate tendrils grasping for anything to hold on to. I felt a jolt of fear coursing through me as a dark arm shot out, grasping for my ankle, pulling me toward the void. Panic surged within me, but I refused to give in. "You have to choose," I shouted against the cacophony. "Let go of the darkness. Fight for the light." The creature reacted to my voice, caught somewhere between rage and sorrow, the shadows ripping away violently, leaving gaping spaces in its form. With my heart pounding, I pressed on, wrapping my own energy around it, hoping to break through the shrouded past that threatened to consume it. "You are not just a reflection of loss. You have the power to change." The shadows twisted violently, screeching at the vibrations of my encouragement. It was as if they were resisting my command. And then there was a shift. The wind swirled, a howling that rose higher, battling against the light rising in tandem. The edges of the creature's form began flickering like a flame caught in a tempest, wavering between shadow and essence. I sensed a battle brewing deep within, what once was waging war against what it had become. In that moment of clarity, a terrifying realization struck me. What if the creature didn't want to change? What if it relished in the darkness, feeding on the suffering it caused? The notion forced me to swallow my fear, a cold dread coursing through me. I looked into those dark eyes again, desperately seeking the last vestiges of humanity. We all have darkness within us, but we can choose light. Join us. Don't let it win. Suddenly, the ground beneath us cracked, sending a shockwave that threw me backward. The air was alive with energy as the struggle escalated. Shadows writhed and shrieked, and I could hear the terrified gasps of my companions as they were caught in the swirling chaos. In that pivotal moment, the air warped around us, casting long, ethereal shadows that danced menacingly across the ground. The creature began to convulse in a violent frenzy, the shadows surrounding it dissolving and reforming, battling an unseen force. I felt the pull of darkness calling, felt it clawing at the edges of my mind. Panic surged, threatening to engulf me. "I won't give in," I shouted into the chaos, drawing strength from the light surrounding me. I forced myself to my feet, the energy pulsing within me like a second heartbeat. The creature's eyes flickered again, and I could see an invisible struggle. It was torn between embracing its darkness and seeking its forgotten light. Then, as if birthed from despair, a low growl erupted from the creature, shaking the ground. The shadows writhed closer, gathering strength as I felt the monsters rising from their depths. The creatures formed faces filled with anger and sorrow, contorted expressions morphing into grotesque forms that almost resembled those of my missing friends. It was a manifestation of pure horror, and even as it stirred within the chaos, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sadness. They were all lost, just like us, trapped in the wake of this monster that thrived on fear. Summoning every bit of courage left in me, I stepped closer, warning whispers scratching in my mind. The creature recoiled again, snared between rage and the faintest glimmer of recognition. "Please listen," I pleaded, heart pounding against my ribcage. "We can't let the darkness keep winning. You can be free." Suddenly, the shadows began to twist and churn, forming into towering specters, clawing at us with long, twisted hands. Each figure reached out, as if for salvation, and the cacophony crescendoed into a discordant symphony of anguish. I could hardly breathe, suffocated by despair, as I understood they were echoes of those lost, those who had allowed fear to consume them. Fighting against the overwhelming tide, I willed myself to forge ahead, raising my hands. You are stronger than this. Together, we can reclaim our freedom. My voice cut through the shrieking darkness, reverberating into the chaos, a single, unwavering beacon that dared to push back against the tempest. The creature's form flickered once more, dimensions warping, shades of light battling for dominance amid the shadows. It shuddered, and I could see its own reflection, each moment of life shining through the chaos, memories breaking the darkness. That's when it happened. A blinding burst of energy rushed forth, and the shadows screamed a deafening wail as they began to unravel. The creature writhed in agony, and all around me, the air was thick with a smoky residue of despair. The darkness surrounding us flickered, encapsulated in a whirlwind, and I felt my heart leap in my chest. Find your true self, I screamed into the void. The shadows twisted in response, shrieking into the night, as fragments of the creature's essence began to spring forth. The air thickened, swirling with what felt like released anguish. In the midst of it all, amidst the confusion and chaos, I caught sight of a brilliant glow breaking through the darkness. It rose from somewhere deep within the writhing mass, its light pulsing like a heartbeat, illuminating not just the clearing, but the very souls around me. That small flicker grew, engulfing the shadows, and I could feel the fabric of that darkness tearing apart, unraveling like old thread. It was both terrifying and breathtaking. As I stood firm, I understood this was not just about one being. It was about each of us, every soul connected by the light we created together. That small flicker grew, engulfing the shadows, and I could feel the fabric of that darkness tearing apart, unraveling like old thread. It was both terrifying and breathtaking. The light radiated outward, taking on a life of its own, and surged forward like a tide crashing over barriers of despair. I felt the warmth wash over me, a protective embrace pushing back the chilling tendrils reaching for my mind. In that light, I could see the specters of my friends and neighbors, their faces contorted in agony as they were dragged into the abyss, lost to their own fears. Suddenly, the creature let out a gut-wrenching howl, a sound that twisted my gut into knots. Rising up, it swirled in a vortex of shadow, dark tendrils reaching toward me as if seeking to draw me into its torment. The earth shook beneath my feet, raw energy colliding with the weight of despair as it battled against the growing light. "Stay with me," I called out to my friends, urging them closer. But as I glanced back, I saw them hesitating, their expressions blanketed in uncertainty. They were drawn to the shadows, and I felt the pull of fear creeping over me again. Would I be left alone to face this horror? As the creature flailed, I noticed its form shifting, morphing into something raw and vulnerable. It was as if the shadows were peeling away, revealing hidden layers of trauma and regret. I could feel the despair pressing against me, suffocating in its intensity, seeking to drain the hope that had ignited within the light. "Don't look away," I screamed, panic seeping into my voice. "We have to focus. We're stronger together." The moment hung heavy in the air as shadows lashed at my words, threatening to suffocate them. I pressed on, weaving my energy tighter around the creature, refusing to let the flicker die. The cries of lost souls echoed in the night, piercing through the chaos, their whispers wrapping around me like the chill of autumn. I could feel their fear, their longing, and I understood in that moment that they were trapped within this monster, living reflections of loss and anguish. I had a breakthrough. I had to show them the light. But as the creature twisted and writhed, something shifted deep within me, a tremor that echoed with their torment. My heart raced violently, overwhelmed by the onslaught of emotions. I felt myself teeter on the edge of despair, the shadows clawing at my thoughts, whispering sweet lies of hopelessness. Was I strong enough to handle this? As if sensing my weakness, the creature unleashed its rage. A dark surge erupted from within it, sending waves of energy crashing into the light, violently trying to snuff out our shared hope. I felt a chilling breeze wrap around me, wrapping tighter than a vice, and I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block out the horrifying cacophony of pain. "Fight it," I urged my friends, eyes pleading. "We're not giving up." I felt the warmth of their presences, but the shadows flickered too close, inching toward them with menacing intent. Fear mingled with the chaos, driving my companions back, their resolve faltering. Just then, the shadows broke apart, revealing a face, a pale, sunken visage staring directly at me. It was my own reflection twisted in horror. The memories I had tried to bury surged to the surface. Long-lost guilt clawed at me, pressing down like a weight too heavy to bear. I couldn't breathe. "No!" I gasped, tearing my eyes from the reflection. "You're not real. You have no power here." But my voice trembled, and doubt began to creep in, stalking like a predator, hunting for the moment of weakness. The creature, sensing my turmoil, fed off my fear, expanding as it drew close, swells of shadow crowding me. Each inch it drew was like an invasion of my mind, whispering thoughts I had long tried to silence. "Why bother? You'll never win. You're just like them." In that moment, I heard my friends screaming, their cries echoing through the howling night as they wrestled with their own shadows. It was a cacophony of despair, a chorus of lost hopes and broken dreams. I couldn't let this happen. Together, I shouted into the chaos, my voice trembling with urgency. "Remember the light. Remember who we are." The shadows recoiled, a flicker of uncertainty passing through the dark mass. The air turned electric, and I could feel the collective energy of our souls meld together, growing stronger, resonating with a determination that threatened to shatter the darkness around us. The creature twisted violently, its form contorting, the shrieks mixing with the chants of hope rising from my friends. Suddenly, I noticed something bright clawing its way through the darkness. It surged, a beacon burning against the chaos. It pulsed with the warmth of our collective strength, breaking through the veil of shadows that clung like a heavy fog. "Don't be afraid," I shouted, brimming with renewed vigor. "Embrace the light. Let it take you. Let it heal what's broken." The creature shrieked again, the sound jarring my thoughts, but I kept pushing forward, forcing my will against the swirling darkness. The shadows raged around us, clawing for a hold, trying to anchor us in despair. But we were gaining ground, defeating the lifeless grip that sought to destroy us. For a brief moment, clarity washed over me. I could see glimpses of those lost souls. I could feel their hopes resonating among the shadows. A chorus of whispers floated in the air, past grievances and regrets lifting like smoke, reaching for the light. But just as I felt the energy peak, one last surge of despair exploded from the creature, slamming into me like a thunderous wave. I stumbled, hit hard by the weight of its rage, and the world spun around me. Again, I was engulfed by darkness, surrounded by memories that sliced through my resolve like shards of glass. But underneath it all, there was something lingering, a flicker of light I had come to believe was extinguished. I knelt there, my breath hitching, desperately searching for it, or perhaps for my own forgotten strength. I could feel the weight of sorrow trying to drag me down, and I fought against it, clenching my fists and drawing upon the warmth that had supported me all along. No matter how suffocating the darkness became, I knew I had to fight for my friends, for the echoes of those lost. "We can rewrite our story," I bellowed, my heart racing now with fury and determination. "This darkness does not own us." Fueled by that thought, I thrust myself forward, my energy colliding with the swirling shadows like the sun piercing through an overcast sky. Fueled by that thought, I thrust myself forward, my energy colliding with the swirling shadows like the sun piercing through an overcast sky. It was a moment of pure defiance, a desperate cry for freedom resonating deep within my core. I could see the mass of darkness convulsing, twisting like a living thing, struggling against the warmth of our light. With every ounce of strength, I channeled my fear into a blinding, radiant energy that pulsed around me. The creature recoiled as if physically struck, a guttural sound escaping its lips, a blend of rage and agony that sent chills racing down my spine. Shadows recoiled, planing against the desperate beat of a heartbeat that rang loudly in the chaotic atmosphere. "Fight!" I shouted, urging my friends to step closer, to feel the pulsing warmth wrapping around us like a cocoon. But they hesitated, their features twisted in conflicting emotions, shadows twisting along the edge of their vision. "We're stronger together. We have to believe." As I stood tall, the warmth began to struggle against the vastness of darkness. I watched the shadows writhe as they melted back just a bit, revealing glimpses of what lay hidden beneath, a tapestry of pain, regret, and desperate sorrow. Flickers of faces I once knew appeared in the shadows. Friends, loved ones that had succumbed to their fears over time, trapped in their own realms of despair. Each flicker pierced my heart like a knife. I felt the overwhelming weight of their pain surrounding me, a reminder of what was at stake. I pressed my palms against the heavy air, pushing against the darkness with everything inside me. Suddenly, a surge of force rippled through the creature, and it let out a terrifying shriek. The darkness morphed, swirling violently, with silhouettes gathering into a massive despair that reached out toward me, grasping like icy hands seeking to pull me down into the depths. The air thickened with a suffocating fear, and I gasped as icy tendrils clawed at my ankles, trying to anchor me to the place of shadows. "No!" I gasped, fighting the urge to give in, my heart racing as the frigid grip tightened. I could feel the shadows whispering in my ear, their words heavy with despair. "You belong here. This is your fate." I shook my head furiously, the echoes of lost souls clawing at my sanity, the visions of their tormented faces flashing before me in panic. I had to break through, not just to save myself, but to free every trapped soul that lingered within this creature. Drawing in a deep breath, I focused on the flicker of light in my chest, the small flame that refused to be extinguished. "We can all get out of this." My voice cracked, but I poured every ounce of hope I had into those words. "We can rise above. Don't let the darkness win." At that moment, something within the creature shifted. The shadows twisted and writhed, battling one another, as if vying for dominance within its form. I could see faces forming in the dark, a horrific mix of anger and anguish, pleading for release, crying out for help. The creature's body contorted, and I realized it was not just a mindless beast, but an amalgamation of lost souls, trapped, suffering, and desperate for escape. The wailing became a rising crescendo, clawing up my spine as the shadows converged, forced out of the way by something primal. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't just fighting the creature. I was battling the very fears that plagued us all. In a sudden burst, the darkness surged toward me like a wild storm, howling a fierce wind that carried with it every fear I had ever faced. I could feel the chilling grips on my mind, trying to suck me into the depths of despair. The frigid wind brought visions of everything I had ever lost or feared losing. Family, friends, my very own self. In that instant, the shadows mirrored my insecurities, and I felt myself spiraling down. The screams of my friends pierced through the chaos, a reminder of my responsibility. "I won't let you take me," I shouted defiantly, strength surging through my veins like fire against ice. "We are not your captives." I willed the energy toward the creature, forcing it against the tide of shadows that threatened to consume me whole. As I pushed against the dark, a brilliant flash erupted, the collision sending ripples through the smothering gloom. I could see flickers of light traveling through the darkness, as if my energy resonated with something deep and lost within the creature. I was reaching them, the lost souls trapped in torment, But just as quickly as the light spread, the creature reacted with a vengeance, expanding outward violently, the darkness surging like a tidal wave, pushing back against our combined hope. "No!" I screamed, feeling the pressure build, the familiar sensation of panic bubbling at the base of my throat. Memories of their anguished faces surged through me, and I realized I was looking into a mirror reflecting all my own failures. The tendrils of despair wrapped tighter around my heart, squeezing every ounce of courage until I could barely breathe. I could feel my foundation starting to shake. The light around me flickered dangerously, threatening to fade. In that moment, I knew I had to dig deeper than ever before. You aren't just shadows. You have the power to fight back. Remember who you once were. Drawing on that flicker of hope, I held it fiercely, grounding myself against the storm. I let out a primal scream of defiance, pouring every last bit of my courage into the light, raising my voice above the chaos. We are not defined by our fears. We have to fight for each other. And with that, a burst of golden radiance erupted from me, cascading through the darkness, flooding the air with its brilliance and illuminating the terrified faces etched in shadow. It was an explosion of energy that shattered the suffocating grip surrounding me and pushed back against the howling monsters that sought to devour us whole. The darkness thrashed violently, momentarily thrown off balance as countless souls recognized their chance for freedom. In that split second, I felt a strong pull, a surge of collective strength rising around me, igniting the desperation in the hearts of those once lost. But just as I felt we were on the edge of victory, the shadows screamed loudly, wailing in anguish and fury. They twisted together, forming into a grotesque embodiment of fear, blocking the path of the light. "No!" I roared, determination spilling forth. "You won't win." The battle raged on as I fought with every ounce of strength I had left. But I felt the shadows closing in around me as the darkness surged, smothering the flicker of hope I had believed in for so long. My heart raced as I caught glimpses of the nightmarish faces, their mouths open in silent screams, drawing closer as tendrils of despair reached for me. "No!" I roared, determination spilling forth. "You won't win." The shadows thickened around me, an oppressive shroud clinging to my skin like a second layer. It slithered against me, whispering sweet, venomous lies that curled into my ears. "Just give up. You'll never escape." With each wicked accusation, I could feel my body trembling, the darkness wrapping tighter with every step I took, each moment straining my resolve. Drawing a deep, shaky breath, I searched frantically for the flicker inside me, the light that had guided me here. I thought about my friends, their faces twisted in fear, but also determination. They were fighting, somewhere in the storm. I felt them struggling to rise above their panic. I couldn't let them down. I summoned the flicker with all my might, pushing aside the darkness that threatened to drown me. As if feeling my resolve, the tomb-like shadows writhed, creating horrific shapes that danced ominously, faces of sorrowing victims forming in the cloud, eyes wide and mouths frozen in screams that echoed in my mind. The tormented souls circled me, whispering words of despair, clawing at the remnants of my faith. "Stop it!" I shouted out, feeling the urge to curl up and hide overwhelm me. The shadows laughed, a low rumble that sent chills spiraling through my spine. I could feel their cold breath on my neck, a haunting reminder of the fears I carried. Then, without warning, a figure emerged at the edge of the swirling mass, a silhouette barely visible through the chaos. My heart raced as I squinted against the darkness and felt a shiver crawl up my spine. The figure moved, its form shifting and stretching, features just out of reach of the fading light, sending ripples of dread through my bones. "Who are you?" I called, my voice faltering, uncertainty creeping in like a thief in the night. The creature before me seemed to shimmer before fading back into the shadows. I felt a wave of disorientation wash over as I realized the unhinged chaos was beginning to copy its own form. The thing attacking my mind was somehow twisting into that ghastly shape. As I peered deeper into the fog, I caught a fleeting glimpse of monstrous teeth and eyes burning with madness. The creature evolution was somehow feeding off my growing fear. The shadows closed in around me tighter, enacting their own twisted mockery of reassurance. Lines of icy terror pushed hard against my chest, as if the fear was rising up to choke me. "Leave me be!" I yelled, darting backward, but it was no use. The shadows surged and wrapped around my legs, pulling me toward that haunting figure, deep into the recesses of darkness I had tried so hard to escape. In desperation, I stretched out my arms, channeling every flicker of light I had. "We are not your prey," I proclaimed, trembling but unyielding. I fought against the pull, the shadows wailing in anger, a cacophony of chilling sounds that echoed eerily, amplifying my growing dread. I could feel the heat rising around me as my determination clashed against the suffocating darkness. Yet the laughter grew louder, taunting me, as if the creature were toying with my fears. "You can't fight what you are," it hissed, the voice a distorted echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. My heart sank. This was not just the voice of the darkness. It was the voice of all the doubts I held, swirling together into one chilling truth. The pull of the shadows intensified, and I felt my energy waning. Each heartbeat echoed a reminder of my fragility, while fear nudged me closer to the edge of surrender. Just as the light around me began to flicker, I caught sight of my friends in the storm. They were there, twisted in fear, but fighting nonetheless. Their anguished faces urged me on, and I couldn't bear to watch them succumb to the same despair that threatened me. "Do not give in," I shouted against the encroaching shadows, the light surging within me once more. Slowly, I reached for them, extending my hands, grasping at the fleeting rays of hope that shimmered within each tortured soul. I could feel their experienced pain feeding back into my heart, and I could not allow that energy to go to waste. But when I focused on gathering the light, the figure before me transformed more violently than ever. I watched in horror as its features morphed into the haunting face of someone I once loved, someone I had lost. Their eyes shone with sorrow, mouth twisted into a silent scream that seemed to absorb my resolve. "No!" I cried, a wave of anguish crashing down on me. "You can't be real. I won't let you take me." But the moment I turned away from that familiar face, shadows swept in from every side, nearly suffocating me in darkness. I had become a vessel of all my pain, amplifying the monster lurking in the depths. It lunged forward. Cold, black tendrils lashed out as it closed the distance. A deep, guttural growl reverberated through the air like an earthquake underfoot, and the walls of shadows began to close in, a coffin of fear pinching around me, stealing my breath. The familiar face merged and twisted, morphing into an array of lost souls, each one echoing the sorrow of their fate, and I felt dread wrap around my heart like chains. "Stay back!" I struggled against the growing panic, desperation spilling from my lips as static filled the air, sparking with unrelenting agony. I fought back, pushing my palms against the swirling shadows, but they only laughed harder, a cacophony of tortured souls mocking my futile attempts. Just as the push from the darkness threatened to swallow me whole, a fiery ember sparked within, igniting my spirit. Drawing on every ounce of inner strength, I roared defiantly, fueling my light against the rolling tide of despair that tried to engulf me. I focused fiercely, pulling from everyone I fought for, the lost friends, the countless souls trapped in turmoil. "You will not take me," I bellowed, as the shadows began to pulse in a furious rhythm, each pulse reacting against my growing might. I could feel the tremors of revolt beneath me as I became the spark between opposites, light battling darkness in an eternal cycle that seemed destined to repeat. The laughter turned to horrific howls, the shadows writhed, challenging the poignant warmth surrounding me. I felt the darkness recoil, battling the flood of light as it surged from within, transforming into a wave that crashed against the monstrous figure solidifying before me. "No more!" I yelled, my voice ringing through the storm, echoing across the darkness as every soul trapped within me rose to join in the fight. They screamed not in fear, but in unison, asserting their innocence and yearning for freedom. For a moment, faint glimmers of color broke through the shadows, bleeding color into a heavy illusion that wrapped around me. And as that happened, I watched in disbelief as the monstrous figure became translucent, a mere reflection of the bitter despair that sought to claim my heart. In that moment of realization, I knew I could break this cycle. I could free them, and me, heart pounding like a drum, I gathered every bit of energy inside. I felt echoes of the lost souls resonating with me. Their pleading cries seeped into my very essence, becoming a part of my fight. I thrust my hands outward, pushing against the monstrous figure that loomed before me. The shadows recoiled, stretching back like a caught breath, as if it felt my resolve. The familiar face shifted and twisted once again, flaring with rage and confusion. It was angry that I was taking this stand, angry that I refused to give in. A low rumble filled the air, and the shadow beast began to swell, puffing itself up to an enormous mass. Flickering lights rushed back, transforming the darkness into flashes of grotesque horror, distorting the faces of those I had lost into eerie grins and tormenting howls. Each flicker built an oppressive atmosphere that bore down on me, making my chest feel like it was tightening in a vice grip. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice breaking through the noise, forcing its way past the chilling cacophony. The torrent of shadows whipped around me violently, shrieking bitterly, the air filled with oily smoke that clung to my skin like a thick blanket. I focused deeper, honing in on the light within that had always been there, flickering like a small candle in the midst of a storm. The warmth spread like wildfire, igniting the energy surrounding me, consuming the vaporous darkness inch by inch. The shadows hissed, the sound sharp and penetrating like knives slicing through air. "Take this!" I yelled, thrusting my hands forward, sending a brilliant wave of light cascading towards the grotesque figure. The energy surged through me like electricity, pouring into the creature that writhed as it felt the heat collapse around it. The faces trapped in the dark clung to me, their gazes heavy with anguish, and I could hear their desperate whispers mix with my own. "Help us, free us!" Pushing through my fear, I reached into the shadows, letting the warmth pull me closer to the swirling mass of the creature. I could see its grotesque face surrounding me, each feature twisting with anger and pain. It was an abomination, a creature born of every regret and dread. But for the first time, it looked vulnerable. As I thrust my energy forward, the shadows shrieked in a cacophony of despair, fingers extending towards me, grasping at my light, desperate to pull me in. I could feel it coiling around my limbs like heavy chains, clinging to every part of my being in a bitter embrace. The monster's eyes locked onto mine, filled with a chilling mix of rage and pleading. The pressure mounted, wrapping tighter around my throat, stopping my breath in my chest. My heart raced, pounding violently against the weight of fear that pressed in, filling my whole existence with claustrophobia. I fought desperately against the suffocation, reaching out with every shred of hope I possessed, absorbing the memories of my friends and their courage into me. "No more!" I screamed, casting aside my doubts. Suddenly, the light exploded forth, blinding the inky darkness and forcing the creature to recoil. It screamed, a deafening, all-consuming noise that erupted, echoing through every inch of the oppressive abyss, shaking the very foundation of my being. The air shimmered as the shadows recoiled once again, but I felt a wave of fear wash over me. In that moment of vulnerability, I caught sight of the creature's true form beneath the shadows. Twisted and broken, its essence mirrored the agony it sought to consume. It was not purely evil, but a reflection of the suffering that had been trapped alongside me. Moved by a surge of empathy, I took a deep breath, centering myself for the fight ahead. I extended my hands, but this time I focused on all the pain of the trapped souls, allowing the flickers of their sorrow to intertwine with my own. "I see your pain," I shouted, my voice shaking but steady. "I will not let you fade into darkness anymore." The creature shrieked once more, but I could see it wavering, the edges of its form shimmering with uncertainty. Shadows began to slink away from me, leaving behind traces of anguish as I continuously poured my light into the space before me, a warm beacon against the bitter chill. Yet the struggle was far from over. I felt dark tendrils racing back, lashing out like vipers, flicking against my arms and legs, craving the warmth of my light and trying to snuff it out. Each kiss of shadow felt like ice biting into my skin, dragging me down back into the depths from which I had risen. I twisted and turned, desperately fighting against the encroaching mass, my breath coming in sharp gasps. Just as despair threatened to overtake me again, I dug deep into my core, calling on the memories of laughter shared with friends, the easy warmth of a familiar hug, and the love that had always kept me afloat. "Together, we rise," I bellowed, channeling everything I had. My hands flickered with blinding light, pushing back fiercely against the relentless shadows. The air ignited as a shockwave released from me, a bright flash illuminating everything, reverberating against the oppressive darkness. The creature's form twisted violently, the faces within wailing in horror as their darkness shrank against the radiant power I now possessed. But more shadows rushed forth, angry and clawing, wild in their fury. They lashed out at my light, attacking relentlessly. I felt their icy grips claw at my mind, seeking to unravel my spirit, forcing me to confront visceral memories of pain and loss. "Come on," I roared, my voice ringing with unshakable resolve. "You can fight this too. We're stronger together." Suddenly, their faces began to flicker with recognition, almost as if they could hear me. Whispers echoed through the darkness, a soft chorus of voices joining my own, reclaiming the fight against despair. "Together, together," they chanted, and the growth of light shimmered even brighter in response, casting everything into radiant brilliance. With every ounce of energy that surged forth, the creature's form twisted, its face transforming into a mask of pure agony as it bucked against the light. I kept pressing forward, confused and scared, but willing to accept the torrent of hope exploding within. "Do you see?" I urged. "Look past the fear. You are not alone." The creature howled louder, the sound anguished, and I could feel the tension in the air, a crackling promise of the battle that was still on the precipice. The light surged, pushing against the shadowy prison, carving a path through the onslaught, each pulse breaking barriers between the souls and their faith, the ghostly weight that had held them captive. The ground trembled beneath my feet, the dark mass shifting dangerously, overcoming the last desperate resistance of the shadows. I tightened my grip, feeling the warmth drawn from the struggling spirits flowing through me, merging like a river finding its course past debris. I could sense it all, their plight, their desires for freedom, and in that moment, it felt tangible. Each flicker released energy, igniting doubt that ignited hope, and if I could just hold on, I could break through. I could sense it all, their plight, their desires for freedom, and in that moment, it felt tangible. Each flicker released energy, igniting doubt that ignited hope, and if I could just hold on, I could break through. The ground trembled beneath me, shaking with the fury of the shadow creature as it struggled against the light that threatened to consume it. The air grew thick with tension, and I could feel an electric hum vibrating through the very marrow of my bones. The sensation was surreal, almost intoxicating, as if every soul trapped in this haunting nightmare lent me their power. But with each surge of light, the darkness retaliated. It lashed out violently, seeking to silence my burgeoning strength. I felt icy tendrils wrap around my limbs, dragging me backward, clawing at the edges of my resolve. The phantom faces of despair loomed nearer, trying to pry open the door to my darkest thoughts, pulling out the memories that still haunted me, the cold nights that felt endless, the laughter that had faded into echoes of silence. "Back!" I screamed, fighting against the tangible weight of the shadows, trying to push me down into depths that felt suffocating. As darkness enveloped me, I saw fleeting images, my loved ones, their faces turning gray, their smiles disappearing like smoke. The despair engulfed me, and I felt like I was spiraling into an abyss. And yet, amidst the chaos, one memory ignited within me, a moment of warmth shared at a sunlit picnic, laughter exploding around us. It was pure and it was joyful. I latched onto that feeling, mining my heart for the strength to counter the shadows. "Remember who you are," I shouted to the swirling mass around me, my voice rising above the cacophony, echoing through the void. I could feel the pulse of my heart syncing with the rhythm of the trapped souls, their cries joining in harmony with my own. It formed a powerful chant that rejected the despair clawing at my mind. As I drew on that energy, I could feel the light pulsing against the darkness, illuminating the faces hidden in the shadows, releasing them from their torment. The screams of anguish turned to sounds of awakening, their raw fight pushing back against the oppressive weight engulfing us. It was as if a dam had burst, flooding the darkness with the vibrancy of our collective hope. The creature howled, its form distorting further, stretching and contorting as it struggled against the light pouring through the cracks in its shadowy exterior. I could see its body flickering between the grotesque figure and something more human, a glimpse of confusion and pain, whispering back the voices of those it had consumed. "Let them go!" I cried, enraged by the injustice lurking within this monster birthed out of fear and anguish. "You do not own them." With a heart full of anger and determination, I pushed against the darkness that was tearing at my resolve. It was a battle of wills, each pulse of light challenging the creature's writhing panic, each heartbeat reinforcing my determination to confront the very core of this horror. Yet the shadows lunged back with renewed fury, splintering forth like a storm, striking my body with icy fingers. I gasped as I was flung backward, tumbling through a vortex of blackness. My mind reeled as tendrils of darkness wrapped around my head, suffocating me with memories, the voices of. The loss grew louder until they became a symphony of torment, drowning out my will to rise. Suddenly, I found myself standing in a nightmare of my own making, a surreal landscape filled with disfigured trees that twisted grotesquely against a blood-red sky. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and chilling winds howled through the branches, sending shivers racing down my spine. It was a hellish realm, one that felt all too familiar. "What is this place?" I whispered, fear creeping into my voice, creeping like vines around my heart. In the distance, I caught sight of shadowy figures flitting among the trees. Lost souls, their faces pale and distressed, searching endlessly for escape. Terrified, I realized this was not just a piece of the creature. This was a manifestation of my own fears, a reflection of a past I believed I had buried. I stumbled forward, desperate to help the lost souls wandering in despair. I called out, "I am here. You are not lost. We can find the way." Each step felt heavier, the weight of the shadows pressing down like shackles on my feet, trying to pull me back into the darkness that had held me so tightly. My heart raced as I pressed forward, fighting against the binds that tried to steal my courage. I reached out to the wandering souls, desperately searching for their lost hopes. "Don't give up," I urged, and to my shock, the faces turned toward me, their eyes wide with longing and uncertainty. As I connected with them, I felt a ray of hope sprout in my chest, the warmth flooding back as they began to join me, linking hands like a fragile chain stretched against the night. Together, we forged forward into the nightmare, forming a united front against the shadows that loomed large around us, harrowing and hungry. But suddenly, the nightmarish scene twisted as a howling wind whipped through the trees, causing shadows to leap violently at us, threatening to swallow our growing light. The faces around me flickered and dimmed as fear spilled back into their eyes like ink soaking through paper. I fought against that fear, fueling the warmth in my heart, propelling it outward to join the light we had gathered. "Fight it!" I yelled, my voice cutting through the chilling winds. "Remember what you love. Hold on to your light." In response, the shadows howled, recoiling slightly at the blast of our collective hope, as if the very essence of our souls was setting fire to their darkness. The ground trembled, and the disfigured trees began to creak and sway, revealing cracks of brightness that pierced through the red haze of the sky. With renewed strength, I led the lost souls toward the light, my own spirit soaring as I felt their resolve strengthen in turn. We pressed onward, the shadows clawing at our heels, but unable to snuff out the warmth we had ignited. As we broke through the final stretch of darkness, I felt a profound shift, a surge of power knocking back the grotesque figures surrounding me. Echoes of joy and love spiraled around, pulling together the broken pieces of our spirits and illuminating the path ahead. Yet, just as it felt we could escape, I heard a sinister whisper that vibrated through the ground, chilling me to my core. "You will never escape." The voice echoed malevolently, twisting through the trees, a haunting reminder of the many battles fought but lost. The shadows swarmed back with a fierce vengeance, crashing against us like a tidal wave, threatening to pull us under once more. "No!" I shouted defiantly, fisting my hands against the onslaught, feeling the warmth of every soul push against me, urging me to stand tall. I could not let us fall back into the darkness after fighting so hard for the light. "Together!" I roared, our voices merging into a tempest of courage that drove back the yowling shadows, echoing out through the darkness. The light grew so bright, it burned away the whispers of despair, illuminating the twisted forms around me. For every flicker of hope, I felt a new wave of warmth wash over, intensifying, shaping into an ethereal barrier protecting us against the darkness. I had to believe that we could break free, that the light could break through. We just needed to trust one another. For every flicker of hope, I felt a new wave of warmth wash over, intensifying, shaping into an ethereal barrier protecting us against the darkness. I had to believe that we could break free, that the light could break through. We just needed to trust one another. But the shadows were relentless. They surged forward, a roiling mass of despair and rage. I could sense their intent, to envelop us, to snuff out our light before we could escape. The howls of lost souls intertwined with the churning darkness, each scream laced with agony. The air around me felt electric, heavy with an impending sense of doom. "Push forward," I urged the souls beside me. Their faces leaned in close, eyes wide with determination that mirrored my own. Together, we strained against the crushing weight of the darkness that sought to bury us beneath the earth. Just as the roiling mass was about to crash over us, a flicker of light broke through the dense blackness. A narrow beam shot down, piercing through the veil of shadows like a sword. It was a shimmering line that felt almost miraculous, catching my breath with its brilliance. More flickers erupted, creating a beautiful cascade that enveloped us like a falling star. "In unity, we rise," I shouted, gripping the hands of those next to me. I could feel their hope igniting my own, each heartbeat merging together in a rhythm that pulsed against the darkness. The shadows hissed, recoiling as the light expanded, pushing against them relentlessly. I could feel our collective strength consolidating, forging a shield against the approaching dark wave. Yet just when it seemed the tide was turning, a deeper growl reverberated through the air. From the heart of the dark mass, an angry figure emerged, a silhouette towering over us, with glowing red eyes that pierced through the fading light. It was the embodiment of despair, a grotesque amalgamation of twisted faces and angry screams. "You think you can escape?" it roared, the sound vibrating through the ground, shaking the very air around us. I felt my heart race, fear threatening to creep back into my mind. But then I remembered the light we had ignited together. "We've come too far to turn back now," I shouted, feeling the surge of hope from the souls at my side. With every ounce of strength, I directed the light toward the looming figure, a bright beacon raging against it. The air thickened with tension, the shadows shrieking in protest as they tore at the radiant force, each scream casting a shudder through my bones. I held firm, focusing on the faces of my companions. Their fear mirrored in mine, yet transformed into determination. The dark figure stepped forward, its twisted features distorting into a malicious grin, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. "Foolish mortals, do you not see? I am your fear made flesh." With those words, the shadows surged forward, swallowing my immediate surroundings in a whirlwind of darkness. I was trapped in a storm, the light flickering like a candle in a hurricane, threatening to be extinguished. "Hold on!" I screamed, spinning in the chaotic dark, fighting to maintain my grip on the bond we shared. The light we built together began to tremble, flickering in response to the monster's threat. But I refused to fade. As if in answer, the lost souls sprang into action, their own light sparking anew. Unity ignited fire in the darkness, illuminating their own pain and transforming it into a shield of brilliance. The bond between us became a swirling vortex of hope surrounding the monster. It writhed in frustration as the shift of light grew stronger, illuminating the twisted forms that surged with life inside the darkness, revealing their hidden beauty. I could see fractured expressions of sorrow and pain, the shadows morphing as they fought to break free from their captor. "Join us!" I cried to the souls still lost within the shadows. "Together we can conquer this fear." My words rang out into the abyss, reaching those still lurking in the darkness, igniting flickers of light that raced through the void like fireflies. In response, a few faces emerged, their gazes filled with hope and longing. They grasped onto the light, transforming their pain into strength, uniting with us in the battle. It was a slow progress, but the glow began to expand, illuminating more of the darkness that it had once consumed. The monstrous figure howled in rage, the sound piercing through the air like a sharpened blade. I could feel the shadows pulling back, recoiling from the brightness that erupted from our unified spirit. It was an energy that fended off despair, creating cracks in the oppressive darkness that had held us captive. "Fight it," I commanded, feeling the swell of collective power rise like a wave. "We are stronger than our fears." The shadows writhed and twisted angrily as the light began to penetrate deeper, each clash releasing bursts of energy that felt like thunder. Still, the brooding figure rushed forward, and the eyes glowed brighter, filled with malicious intent. The darkness unleashed a fury, a torrent of sharp shadows that reached for me, trying to cut my connection to the light. I felt a cold finger graze my cheek, a reminder of my darkest moments, whispering sweetly of despair. But I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the presence of every soul beside me. I focused on the warmth pooling within, feeling a collective resolve. "Now!" I shouted, and together, we thrust our hands forward, sending waves of light cascading toward the monster, surging forward into its heart. The shadows screamed as our energies clashed violently, a battle of light against the twisted horror of despair. The moment we made contact, a blinding flash erupted, brighter than anything I had ever seen. I was overwhelmed, the brilliance washing over me as familiar forms darted through the dreamlike haze, flitting through my memories, igniting lost laughter, warm hugs, and cherished smiles. In a violent shatter, the darkness exploded, fragments scattering into the bright canvas of daylight that emerged. The horrifying figure twisted and contorted, its jagged form fracturing into a million shards that sparkled like glass, catching the light and melting away, revealing the lost souls beneath, free at last. But as the darkness diminished, a new fear gripped my heart, a chilling realization that the darkness could return. I could feel its remnants lingering in the air, whispering unsettling reminders of pain, eager to reclaim its lost subjects. My breath hitched, the shadows still clawing at my edges, flecks of fear threatening to slip back into my mind. I looked around at the faces beside me, those who had joined the fight. Their expressions mirrored my own dread. "We must stay strong," I said, my voice steadying as terror hung in the air like a suffocating mist. "We can't let it come back. We have to light the way forward." But deep down, I felt a flicker of uncertainty. Would this fight ever truly end? Or was this just the beginning of a more profound horror lurking just beyond the horizon? As the last of the twisted shadows dissolved into the light, an unsettling silence fell over us. I could feel the air grow thick, as if time itself had paused to catch its breath. The other souls around me exchanged anxious glances, the euphoria of liberation quickly turning to dread. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling coming from the depths of the forest surrounding us. It was soft at first, a quiet whisper that brushed through the trees like the breath of something unseen. My heart raced as the sound grew louder, shifting from mere background noise to a cacophony of rustling branches and disembodied whispers echoing in every direction. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. The others nodded, eyes wide and fearful, scanning the shadowy outlines of the trees. A thick gloom lingered, shadows hanging like heavy curtains, and for a moment, I felt as if the very air was alive with tension. From beyond the trees, a low, guttural growl reverberated through the night, chilling my blood. It was an inhuman sound, one filled with rage and hunger. My instincts screamed for me to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground, paralyzed by the weight of the darkness that still clung to the edges of my vision. With the growl echoing ominously, I dared to peer into the tree-line, squinting at the inky blackness where shapes lurked, merging with the night. Shapes that seemed almost human but grotesquely warped, elongated limbs reaching out, fingers curling like claws against the trees. "They're coming!" I shouted, breaking the spell of silence, urging everyone to take cover. The air sizzled with an electrifying panic as the lost souls darted to hide behind the remnants of fallen logs and thick bushes, their lights flickering nervously as they sought safety. I felt a desperate need to protect them, a fierce instinct igniting within me. "Stay together," I commanded, knowing the strength of our numbers was our greatest weapon against whatever was waiting for us. Then the first one emerged, a figure draped in shadows, hybrid-like, with limbs that twisted unnaturally. Its face was hidden behind long strands of matted hair, cascading like a veil, obscuring any features that could give it a semblance of humanity. It moved toward us slowly, drifting like smoke in the night, and I could sense a chilling hunger emanating from it. Fear coursed through me as I took a step back. "Stay back!" I yelled, raising my hands instinctively, but deep inside, I felt the tendrils of dread wrapping tighter around my heart. There were more than one. I could hear the rustling grow louder, clawed feet padding through the underbrush like predators closing in on their prey. The distant glowing slivers of light we had fought so hard to cultivate flickered and dimmed, feeding off our fear. The terrifying shapes began to overlap one another, creating a wave of shadows pulsating through the trees, hungry and watchful. "Prepare to fight!" I shouted, trying to rally my companions as adrenaline flooded my veins. The air was thick with apprehension, each of us brimming with uncertainty as the darkness descended. I could see the whites of their eyes shining brightly amidst the gloom. They were scared, yet they nodded in agreement, ready to stand with me. The lead creature grew bolder, inching closer, its posture contorting as it reached out with elongated fingers that twisted like snakes, nails scraping against the bark of trees, trailing streaks of shadows. It raised its head slowly, revealing a glimpse of a face, pale and hollow, with eyes that reflected a depth of unending darkness. "Why do you resist?" it rasped, the voice a low growl that danced sinfully in the air. "You belong to us now. Your fear feeds our existence." I felt a thrill of nausea at its words, fear threatening to creep back in. The creatures shuffled forward, forming a tight circle around us, closing in, the shadows converging like a noose. The whispers grew louder, haunted echoes of pain and despair that filled my ears, trying to drown out my thoughts, feeding the darkness with every ounce of my doubt. "No!" I shouted, refusing to back down. I could feel the warmth of the souls beside me, their flickering light trembling as courage battled against fear. "We're not yours. We are more than your shadows. We are stronger." The creature before us screeched, a bone-chilling sound that shattered the night, a sharp reminder of the pain that still lingered in the air. In an instant, the other creatures howled in unison, erupting from the surrounding darkness, their forms skittering erratically, spiraling into a chaotic frenzy. They rushed toward us, dark limbs drawing nearer, a storm of despair unleashed. "Together!" I screamed, raising my hands again as the souls behind me pressed closer, feeding my resolve. Light poured from our combined energy, breaking through the murky darkness, a fierce burst of warmth that surged like a tidal wave against the encroaching horror. But just as the light surged outward, the ground beneath us trembled. A fissure opened wide, splitting the soil, releasing an ear-splitting roar that echoed through the night. The earth wrenched violently, and I was thrown off balance, tumbling back but managing to grasp the hands of my companions, holding them tight. The creatures paused, their forms wavering for a moment, caught between our surge of light and the chaos erupting around us. The ground shuddered again, and from the depths of the darkness, something far larger broke free, a massive shadow rising, towering over us like a mountain, blocking out all remaining light. I felt the air chill, a heavy weight of despair crashing down, and terror flooded my senses. This was unlike anything I had faced, beyond the grotesque figures that had haunted me before. This was pure, unfiltered dread given flesh, dark limbs stretched towards the sky, limbs adorned with writhing tendrils that swept through the air like phantom snakes. "Stay close," I yelled, forcing my trembling legs to steady as the shock of it all settled deep within. My heart raced, echoing in my ears as I tried to draw strength from those around me, feeling their light waver like candle flames in a storm. The creature towered above, and its grotesque head descended, its voice echoing with a sinister allure. "You cannot hide from your past," it rasped, each word laced with venom. "You are trapped by your own fear. Join us, and the darkness will be lifted." As it spoke, I felt my mind racing through memories, the moments I had fought against my own despair, the times I had given in to the demons of my mind. Doubt flooded my thoughts, laced with anguish and the familiarity of loneliness. But in the chaos, I recalled the spirits gathered at my side, the light we had built together. I could feel their strength surging, whispering soft reassurances against the darkness. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for those lost in despair," I shouted back defiantly. The creature's laughter pierced like icy knives. "Foolish child, you still believe you can win?" With that, the massive figure surged forward, shadows extending like an all-consuming fog, encircling us in a cold embrace. I could feel my heart pounding, the overwhelming pressure of fear threatening to crush my resolve. Yet something within ignited fiercely, a flicker of rebellion against the dread. "No, we are not afraid," I shouted, raising our joined hands high, feeling the light surge from our hearts, every flicker turning into a blazing beacon of defiance. Just as the darkness lashed out, our light erupted in a blinding flash, illuminating the entire forest as if it were day. The towering creature paused, momentarily disoriented by the sheer force of our combined wills. It was a moment of vulnerability, a brief crack in the darkness where hope surged strongest. I felt the energy swell, pulling from every soul, and I pushed forward. "Now!" We charged together, stepping into the blinding radiance that embraced us, a dazzling fire tearing through the shadows. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the pulse of hope weaving through our hearts like an electrifying thread, binding us together. With every step, the darkness recoiled as if repelled by the very force of our unity. The monstrous figure lurched backward, startled, its swirling mass of limbs momentarily disrupted. It let out a thunderous roar that shook the ground beneath us, sending shudders through my body. The sound echoed in my ears like a death knell, warning me of the fierce retaliation that I could feel building. "Keep pushing forward," I cried, feeling a surge of determination flood my veins. Each step was like a leap into the unknown, every heartbeat echoing with the urgency of survival. The shadows writhed around us, their whispering voices clawing at my mind, trying to drag me back into the depths of despair. I focused on the warmth of my companions, their lights flickering beside me, drawing strength from our shared resistance. But as we advanced, a shadow lunged from the darkness, a smaller figure sprinting toward us, its movements erratic and quick, like a predator diverting from its pack. I caught a glimpse of its face, hollow eyes glinting, a sharp, toothy smile twisted into a grotesque sneer. There was a familiar malice in its gaze that sent a chill down my spine. "It's a trap," one of my companions shouted, but it was too late. The figure dove into our circle, and darkness surged outward like a tidal wave, a cold wave crashing against our light. The familiar faces of lost souls began to materialize, eyes filled with agony, made tangible by their longing to escape the nightmare they were trapped in. "Join us," they wailed, their voices echoing in a haunting chorus, drawing on my deepest fears, memories of failure and regret. I felt the shadows clawing at my own consciousness, whispering temptations of surrender. For a moment, I hesitated, ensnared in the web of despair that seemed to wrap around me, pulling me down. "No, I am not yours," I shouted, fighting back, but the shadows clawed closer, relentless in their pursuit. I heard the shouts of my companions growing fainter as they struggled against the darkness creeping toward us. Suddenly, the large shadow figure regrouped, using the distraction as an opportunity to close the distance. It howled in triumph, and I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet as it lunged toward me, shadow tendrils snaking outwards, seeking to ensnare me and pull me into the abyss. Just when I felt the weight of hopelessness crash down, I remembered the light we had ignited together. Drawing on every ounce of courage remaining within me, I reached deep into my heart, forcing the flickering light to blaze even brighter. Together, I screamed, urging my companions to do the same. We formed a barrier of light fueled by shared strength and undying hope, pushing against the oncoming tide of darkness. The twisted screams grew louder, but the power of our unity pulsated, drowning out the whispers of despair. The dark figure halted, eyes widening in shock as our lights surged and expanded, taking its form, blinding and fierce. "Fight! We can do this!" one of my companions yelled, courage breaking through fear as our spirits soared. With every heartbeat, the dark figure lurched and twisted, trying to break our light. But we stood firm, knuckles white as we clung tightly, refusing to let go. As my heart hammered in my chest, I could see the twisted forms begin to shimmer, the shadows losing their grip. The truth is, they were born from fear, and fear could be vanquished. Our light was, illuminating their anguish, flickering it into existence, and drawing forth their humanity. For every hand I felt gripping mine, I channeled that energy into our collective force, the warmth spreading farther and driving the shadows back like a fierce wind. The roaring of rage resonated deep within the darkness, but we were a flame fueled by hope, growing larger and more vivid in the face of despair. The creature's form began to deteriorate, disintegrating into swirling tendrils of shadow that flaked off into the wind, lost like forgotten dreams. Slowly, inch by inch, I could see the ground emerging from beneath the shroud of darkness, revealing once hidden roots, flowers, and glimpses of bright green grass unfurling beneath our light. But just as the dark figure began to fade, as if surrendering back into the void, a piercing shriek echoed through the air, a final act of desperation that clawed at my sanity. It was a sound that ricocheted through my skull, reverberating like a nefarious bell tolling for the damned. "Do you think you have one?" It roared, the voice a jagged echo in the night, dripping with malice. "I am merely a reflection of what lies within you. You cannot escape from yourself." Around me, the light flickered violently, shadows still lurking in the periphery. The cries of the lost souls surged again, more anguished now, and I felt fear creeping back into the corners of my mind. I could see them creeping through the gaps, threatening to invade the fragile light we had built. "No, I am stronger than my fears," I shouted once more. "We are stronger." With renewed determination, I sent a pulse of light toward the laugh that still echoed in the air, resonating against the darkness like a war cry. The shadows lunged again, coiling and twisting in a desperate attempt to reclaim what they had lost. My heart raced as I fought not just against physical horrors, but against the internal shadows, the doubts, regrets, and past mistakes that clawed at the edges of my mind. The darkness surged toward us, seeming to pull away the light, the flickering of hope growing more fragile. Panic seeped through the cracks as the ground trembled again beneath our feet, and I realized that this fight was about more than physical light against dark shapes. It was a battle for my very soul. In that moment of overwhelming dread, I shut my eyes tight, pushing away the suffocating whispers and fears. I drew in a deep breath, channeling all that I had learned from those who had fought alongside me. In that instant, I recalled the glimmers of joy that had kept me going, the laughter, the love, everything that had ever ignited my spirit. When I opened my eyes again, I felt different, empowered. With hands raised, I sent forth a radiant light that surged with all the memories of happiness and hope I could muster, enveloping the darkness in a cocoon of brilliance. "Begone!" I bellowed, and the sound resonated deeply, echoing throughout the night and shaking the roots below. The shadows let out a cacophony of discordant shrieks as my light pushed against them, forming a barrier that repelled their advance. In a blinding flash, the last remnants of the shadow creatures disintegrated, swirling away like smoke pulled into the wind. With their destruction, the lost souls around us began to fade into their memories, free at last. But deep down, I knew that a part of the darkness still lingered, and it wouldn't be the last I saw of it. As the faint silhouettes of the lost souls faded away, the forest creaked and groaned around me, as if still under the weight of the recent chaos. The air was heavy with a peculiar stillness, a silence that felt strangely menacing after the turmoil. It was like a predator lying in wait, biding its time before it would strike again. I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was watching from the shadows, lurking just beyond the reach of my light. With my heart pounding, I turned to my companions, relieved to see them still standing by my side, their faces a mix of residual fear and determination. "We need to get out of here," I whispered urgently, glancing nervously at the trees swaying slightly as if they were alive and aware of our presence. The very ground seemed to hum beneath us, vibrating with a dark energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Where do we go?" one friend asked, fear etched across their features. A single beam of moonlight broke through the canopy above, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. The forest had taken on a life of its own, and I felt a growing sense of foreboding as ancient branches reached like skeletal fingers toward us. "There," I pointed toward a faint glow in the distance that seemed to offer a sanctuary. "We can make it there. Come on." As we moved forward, the light became brighter, but at the same time, the trees seemed to close in tighter around us. The shadows darted between the trunks, whispering in a language I couldn't comprehend, a low cacophony that increased with every step we took. I quickened my pace, desperate to reach the light, my instincts screaming that we were racing against something far worse than we had just faced. The ground beneath us grew uneven, tangled roots jutting out like claws ready to trip us. I stumbled but quickly regained my balance, glancing back at my friends to make sure they were still behind me. Every second felt like an hour, the air thick with tension as I could feel that presence behind us, ever watchful and sinister, ready to pounce. The glow ahead pulsed softly, promising warmth and safety, but there was something unsettling about it. The closer we got to it, the more I could sense that it was not a beacon of safety, but perhaps a bait, a lure crafted by the very darkness we thought we had vanquished. Still, I pushed myself to reach it, convinced that any light was better than the consuming darkness trailing us. "Keep moving," I urged, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The low whispers morphed into growls, echoing through the thick foliage, and I could feel the oppressive weight of unseen eyes boring into us, anticipating our collapse in fear. The thrill of helplessness clawed at my psyche, trying to sow seeds of doubt and despair. Suddenly, a blaring rustle erupted from the underbrush to my left, and I caught a fleeting glimpse of something grotesque, a writhing mass of shadows emerging, twisting together like serpents. It advanced toward us, bright eyes glinting maliciously in the dim light. Panic surged through me as I turned to run, my heart racing faster than my feet could carry me. "Run!" I shouted, and we barreled forward, fear propelling us as the shadows snapped at our heels, nipping, clawing, hungry for our fear. The glow flickered brighter, illuminating the path, but it felt like a cruel joke. My instincts screamed at me to stop, to question what lay ahead. I glanced back just once, taking in the twisted forms chasing us, their shadows melding and morphing into shapes that echoed the worst parts of our fears. Faces contorted in anger, claws that resembled the very roots we had tripped over, drawing ever closer. In my heart, I knew we had to reach that light or risk being consumed. The glow now pulsed wildly, casting elongated shadows that danced madly about, creating unsettling illusions as if reality itself were deteriorating. I could almost hear it calling to me, seductive, tempting warning. My thoughts spiraled as we neared the light. Was this freedom or an illusion? With every stride, I wrestled with the conflicting emotions that rose within me. Despite the encroaching terror, I could feel the warmth of hope emerging again, igniting a fire within my chest. I focused on that feeling, driving me onward even as the shadows drew closer, taunting us with their whispers. As we burst through the thick underbrush, we stumbled into a clearing, and my breath caught in my throat at the sight before me. There, standing in the center, was a massive tree, ancient and gnarled, its branches sprawling like the arms of a giant. The bark shimmered with an ethereal light, casting glimmers all around, almost as if it was alive, breathing, watching. But before we could catch our breath, the air thickened with tension as the shadows surged into the clearing behind us, coalescing into something even more terrible than before. No longer a mere ambush, but a formidable creature formed entirely from the darkness. It was an abomination, a grotesque figure that eclipsed the glow of the tree. The eyes gleamed with hatred, its toothy grin stretching wider, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Now, you will pay for your defiance," it hissed, every word dripping with venomous delight. I felt cold fear slither down my spine. It was a confrontation I had not wanted. Facing this monstrosity now felt inevitable. I glanced at my friends, their faces as pale as mine, terror etched in their eyes. We were out of time. "Together again," I said, desperation fueling my voice. "We beat it once. We can do it again." With pooled strength, I grasped the hands of my companions, drawing on the bond we had forged from our trials. The tree gleamed brighter, feeding off our resolve as we stood against the encroaching threat, channeling the warmth and light that still flowed through us. "Fight, we cannot give in," I shouted, my voice echoing defiantly as the shadows lunged once more, ready to engulf us. And as the darkness surged forward, I felt an overwhelming surge of power. I could almost see the boundless light swirling within us, igniting into a fierce blaze that illuminated the entire clearing. Just when I thought everything would succumb to the shadow, I released a concentrated beam of light from my hand, merging it with the aura of the ancient tree. With an explosive burst of energy, the colors erupted like fireworks, cascading into the dark being with a forceful resolve. The shadows hesitated, recoiling slightly from the intensity of the light. It was a moment's hesitation, but it was enough. In that fleeting second of weakness, we surged, pushing forward, a wave of brilliance crashing against the dark. For freedom, I screamed, pouring everything I had into that moment, feeling the warmth radiate from every corner of the clearing as my friends joined in. The screech from the dark creature pierced the cool night air, echoing with pain and anguish, its form beginning to unravel at the seams, shadows splintering into a storm of black and gray. But before I could pull away, a wire-thin tendril darted out from the chaos, striking me across the chest. The icy grasp of fear wrapped around my heart, clawing at my insides, and for an instant, doubt surged back, whispering of the futility of our efforts. "Don't give up," one of my friends yelled, their voice cutting through my numbing panic. "We're with you." With that, I focused again, drawing strength from their words, believing in the power of our spirits bound together. I raised my arms once more, funneling all my light into a radiant beam that coalesced in front of me, an embodiment of our collective strength. "Be gone!" I shouted, hoping to drown out the dark whispers, and as I thrust my hands forward, the light erupted in a blinding flash, cascading over the shadow figure. With a final, anguished howl, the dark creature disintegrated into a flurry of dust, cast into the cool night winds. In its wake, the clearing fell silent, as if time itself had paused to witness our victory. But as the light began to dim and fade, I couldn't shake the feeling that this had only been a reprieve, a moment of calm before a larger storm. The tree continued to shimmer, but I caught a glimpse of movement beyond the swaying branches and realized the shadows still lingered at the edges, scheming and waiting. I turned to my friends, a feeling of unease settling over me. "We can't let our guard down," I said softly, feeling the darkness still whispering in the dark corners of my mind. "Did you see that?" one of them asked, their voice trembling with fear. It wasn't just shadows. It felt alive. I nodded, knowing that the true peril was lurking just beyond the illuminated circle around the tree. The landscape changed gradually, from a vibrant backdrop of glimmering light to a dark horizon whispering secrets and desires I couldn't comprehend. With each passing moment, the air grew colder, seeping through the cracks of our confidence and pressing relentlessly against my skin. The trees were closer now, their bark warped and twisted as if they held memories of ancient terrors that shaped their forms. A low rustling began to echo through the clearing, drawing our attention. My heart raced as I squinted into the darkness, trying to locate the source of the sound. Shadows danced between the trees, and for a brief moment, I could swear I caught glimpses of twisted figures with gnarled limbs and hollow eyes staring outward, drawn toward the lingering flicker of our light. "What is that?" another friend whispered, stepping closer to me, their arm brushing against mine. The contact felt grounding, but it did little to ward off the primal dread clawing at my insides. "I don't know," I replied, the uncertainty of our situation flooding my mind. "But we need to be ready. We have to stick together." Suddenly, a thick mist began to seep from the shadows, curling around the edges of the clearing. It had a heavy presence, swirling and shifting like a living thing, casting an oppressive weight over us. The mist swallowed the light of the tree, darkening our sanctuary and pushing the warmth of hope further away. "Stay close," I commanded, feeling the fleeting remnants of bravery gather at my core. We huddled together, the chill of the fog seeping into our bones, and I could feel the pulse of fear throbbing loudly in my ears. With a determined breath, I steeled myself and stepped forward, the ground firm yet unexplored beneath my feet as I scanned our surroundings. The mist thickened, curling around my limbs like fingers, whispering dark secrets that tugged at my sanity. "What do they want?" I thought frantically. "What are they after?" Before I could voice my worries, the ground trembled violently, and the roots beneath us began to shift and writhe, as if protesting our presence. My friends cried out, stumbling as the earth rippled, cracking under our feet like thunder. The shadows seemed to awaken, their formless shapes elongating into twisting figures that pulled from the deep gleam of the darkness. "Hold on to me," I shouted, reaching for their hands again, squeezing tightly as I felt a surge of energy encircling us. The mist began to swirl rapidly, obscuring our vision, and in that chaos, I caught sight of movements that made my skin crawl. Faces, anguished and tormented, lost souls that were caught in an endless cycle of despair. "They're trapped," I gasped, my breath hitching in my throat as I saw them reaching out toward us, pleading with eyes that begged for release. "We have to help them." "Are you insane?" one friend shouted back, panic lacing their voice. "We can't just—" "No, wait," I interrupted, my resolve igniting as I realized what we might be able to do. "If we can amplify the light together, we might pull them through. They can't be left like this. They deserve peace." As I spoke those words, the ground trembled again, and the mist closed in tighter, wrapping us in its cold embrace. Almost as if sensing our intentions, the shadows hissed, churning violently, and I felt the air grow thick with anger. "Those who linger here do not deserve your hope," a voice taunted, sharp and mocking, echoing from the swirling mist. "You cannot save them, nor can you save yourselves." But we were already committed. Ignoring the icy dread pooling in my stomach, I whispered to my friends, encouraging them to believe in the light that had brought us this far. "Focus," I declared, raising my hands again. "We need to draw from the light." As we stood together, a flicker of warmth ignited in my chest. We channeled our fear into something powerful, something that rose alongside our determination, as if the energy was a living thing. It grew, taking form, shimmering within the mist and casting a soft glow around us. I could see the trapped souls watching, their faces a mixture of hope and fear. The shadows surrounding us writhed, feeling the light's growing strength. Suddenly, bursts of dark energy surged out, wrapping around us like serpent tails, lashing out in a desperate attempt to quell the radiance we had begun to forge. "Don't let them in," I shouted, clenching my teeth, feeling the grip of despair trying to pull me under. The cries of the lost souls grew louder, a chorus of grief that threatened to drown us. As one, we pushed back against the weight of the shadows, light spilling forth like water breaking free from a dam. With a surge of energy, I thrust my hands forward, sending a bolt of light crashing toward the dark tendrils. The air crackled as the two forces collided, creating a blinding explosion that lit up the twilight sky, illuminating our surroundings for a heartbeat. But amidst the sheer brilliance, a form began to materialize before us, rising from the ashes of shadow. A figure emerged, its body composed of swirling smoke and haunting faces caught in perpetual agony. "It's him," I whispered, recognizing the creature that had tormented us. Its eyes gleamed with malice, reflecting my own terror as it advanced, dark tendrils reaching toward us with an insatiable hunger. "Fools," it bellowed, "you think you can banish me with light? I am born from despair, and I will consume your hopes. You will join the legions of lost souls. Together," I cried, forcing my voice to break through the suffocating terror wrapping around me. "We must unite our strength." As we gathered closer, I felt the warmth of my friends bolstering my own light, merging until it felt like a beacon that could pierce the darkest night. We rose above our fears, above the whispers and threats that the creature cast, becoming an unstoppable force of brilliance. The shadows hissed in fury as we pushed the light out with sheer determination, flooding the clearing with a vibrancy that pushed against every lurking form, forcing them back toward the edges of the woods. The dark figure wailed, both enraged and afraid, as our energy swirled into a magnificent storm that chased away the mist and illuminated the night. The lost souls, now barely visible, began to rise, their despair slowly transforming into glimmers of hope, pulling away from the dark entity. "Thank you," one of them whispered, their voice resonating in the space between realms before they dissolved into the light, freed at last. But as they vanished, the creature lunged at us with a ferocity that surprised me. Just as I thought we were close to victory, it struck with a powerful force, tearing through our barrier, and the world around us erupted into chaos. I staggered back. An overwhelming wave of darkness crashed over me. Panic flooded my veins as shadows wrapped tightly around my legs, almost pulling me down into the abyss. My breath quickened, each gasp feeling more desperate as I fought against the suffocating grip. I could barely see my friends through the encroaching shadows, their silhouettes flickering like candle flames in the wind, and I feared for what might happen to us if we separated. The dark figure loomed before me, its form shifting and twisting, morphing into grotesque shapes that tried to break my resolve. I heard mocking laughter echo around the clearing, an unsettling sound that sent chills dancing down my spine. "You think you can defeat me?" it taunted, voice hissing like a dozen snakes. "You are nothing but fragile lights in my realm." With every word, the shadows surged, darker and thicker, drowning the precious light we had gathered. I felt my energy wavering, but deep inside, a flicker of defiance ignited. This was our moment. I couldn't let it take away what we had fought so hard to protect. I needed to stand my ground. "Don't let it win," I shouted, forcing myself to focus on the light within me. It flickered like a dying ember, but I knew there was still power left in that spark. "Together!" I screamed, urging my friends to fight back with me. They joined in, gathering close, and I could feel the warmth of their presence pushing against the encroaching terror. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, visualizing the light radiating from our hearts, breaking through the darkness like dawn breaking through the night sky. But just as that glow began to swell within us, I felt the icy tendrils of the shadow grasping my arms, cold and suffocating. The creature lunged forward, its maw opening wide as it hissed in fury. "You will regret this." In that moment, a sound like shattering glass erupted through the misty air, and the shadow screamed, retreating momentarily as if stung. I opened my eyes in surprise. The crack echoed again, louder, until the very ground beneath us began to shudder. "What is happening?" I cried out, looking around frantically. The air pulsed with energy that felt alive, tingling with an electrical charge. Tiny flashes of light sparked in the distance, illuminating strange shapes within the dark mists. "What do we do?" my friend shouted, shaking with fear as they caught glimpses of the grotesque forms that hovered just out of reach. "Stay together," I urged, my voice steadier than I felt. I could see the branches of trees bending toward us, their twisted forms almost reaching out, as if they were drawn to the tension in the air. Each crack of energy sent ripples through the clearing, fueling the shadows that writhed around our feet. Suddenly, from the depths of the fog, a figure emerged. Not the dark creature, but something different, less defined and more shadowy. It seemed to ebb and flow, constantly changing its shape, flickering with unsettling, fragmented flashes of faces twisted in despair. Their mouths opened in silent screams, eyes wide with terror, yet they remained trapped within a heavy shroud of darkness. "We need to save them," I insisted, my heart pounding in my chest to see them in such anguish. The sight of their suffering cut deeper than any fear I had felt before. "Are you crazy? We can't," one of my friends yelled, fear and disbelief etched on their face. I could sense their hesitation, the pull of self-preservation creeping in as the darkness pulsed closer. But the call for help rang relentlessly in my ears. The lost souls were reaching out, their ethereal forms flickering near. "They deserve to be free," I exclaimed, conviction fueling my words. Just as I felt the resolve in my chest swell, the ground shook violently, and the dark creature roared, snapping its attention back to me. "Foolish! You'll doom yourselves!" It bellowed, shadows coiling and curling around its form, growing denser and more imposing. I squared my shoulders, resistance flaring, channeling every ounce of courage into a singular thought. "We can't leave them behind!" I screamed, and a surge of light burst forth from the center of our group, creating a twinkling halo in the gloom. "What are you doing?" my friend screamed, but I couldn't let fear cloud my mind. I took a step toward the shadowy figures trapped in their endless cycle. The light became brighter. Each pulse synced with the rhythm of my heart, filling the clearing with a radiant glow. I reached out, drawing closer to the figures. Their anguished expressions began to form clearer and clearer, recognition piercing my soul. They were not just phantoms. They were memories made manifest, events from my life I had long buried. Friends that I had lost, moments of regret, resurfacing with a sharpness that threatened to overwhelm me. "Help us," one of the souls implored. "You have the power. Release us." As my heart raced, the shadows surrounding me shrieked with fury, writhing like angry serpents. "No!" The dark creature screamed, launching itself toward me, formidable and enormous. "They're nothing. You can't save them." But I could feel the light deep within me, melding with the energy of my friends, shining more radiantly than before. The warmth spread through my body, bursting forth in a tidal wave. "I won't let you have them," I roared, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. "Do it," I shouted to my friends, urging them to join me. With a collective gasp, we extended our hands, channeling everything we had toward the encircled souls. The darkness writhed and screamed, lashes of black energy striking against our light. I could feel an immense pressure, as though the very air were being sucked away, compressing us within the vortex of shadows. But the light surged, transforming into a blinding spiral that cut through the chaos. "You will not win," I shouted again, pushing forward, each word driving the light brighter. As it reached unseen entities, the swarm of trapped souls merged with our energy, their ethereal forms dissolving into sparkling motes of light. They lifted higher, rising against the dark, and the creature screeched, a sound that resonated deeply within my bones, sending tremors throughout the clearing. With every passing second, I could see the certainty and hope flickering in their eyes, recognition igniting their essence. "We are free," they echoed, their voices merging with our own, creating a beautiful harmony that shattered the cacophony of darkness. But then, in the midst of the luminous swirl, I glimpsed something that made my blood run cold. A shape gathering at the fringes of the glowing light. It was the creature, back and more furious than ever, its eyes burning hot with rage and despair. It clawed its way closer, a mass of shadows that was no longer just trying to contain us, but had taken on a feral determination, ready to tear us apart. "Your light is nothing. You're all weaker than you think," it hissed, and the shadows lunged forward again, shrouding us once more as the brilliance began to dim. As I felt the onslaught of darkness approach, the fear gripped me tight. Was it all for nothing? Would we be consumed by this impassable void? I had to believe. Desperation surged within me, igniting an overwhelming will to fight. These souls deserved liberation, and I would not let it perish into oblivion. Glaring into the darkness, I shouted with everything I had left, "Fight back!" In that moment, the light surged up like a fortress, clashing against the shadow once more. The struggle spiraled around us, light filling the air with an intensity that made the shadows shudder. I could feel the collective power building. Every ounce of hope, every moment of defiance plunged into our epic struggle. Together, we wouldn't just face the darkness. We would push it away, fight against every haunting whisper that threatened our resolve. "Let's show it what light can do," I roared, and the luminous energy pulsed in response, resonating with a heartbeat, drowning out the creature's screams as it clashed into our swath of brightness. In that instant, I knew we hadn't just drawn the light within us. We had become it. The light pulsed with unyielding strength, brushing away the shadows that clawed at us. I felt its warmth coursing through my veins, a burning sensation that ignited my spirit. The figure of darkness struggled against our combined force, its otherworldly shrieks echoing in a chaotic blend of rage and confusion. "Don't give in," I shouted, feeling my voice blend into the shimmering spirit of our collective energy. Each word became a force in itself, pushing against the suffocating darkness, sending ripples of vibrant light scouring through the clearing. The shadows wriggled and recoiled, but deep within, I could sense the creature gathering its strength, preparing for one final, desperate attack. It hungered for despair, preyed on fear, seeking out vulnerability in those who dared to challenge it. The air thickened, oppressive and suffocating, pressing down on us like an invisible weight. In the heart of this confrontation, I felt my mind racing, searching for the right words, the right spell, anything that could bind the creature to its shadows. I remembered the words of a sage I had met years before, a tale of triumph over darkness. My heart surged with newfound energy as I reclaimed that memory, feeding it into the growing beacon of light. Soul to light, we bind you, I yelled, thrusting my fists forward as the shadows lunged, eager to consume us. We will not falter in darkness. Surging with determination, the bright energy expanded outward, twisting and scattering in all directions like a brilliant sun breaking through storm clouds. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as pieces of their own twisted essence cracked and fell away, dissolving into nothingness. But it wasn't enough. The dark figure coiled tighter, fueled by its own fury, as if it thrived on our every inch of hesitance. I could see it morphing, the features of anguish and torment mixing together, shapes within shapes as it drew closer, eager to silence our light. My friends huddled near, their faces pale and filled with terror, and for a moment, doubt crept into my heart. Would we really prevail against something so ancient and unyielding? The shadows pressed against us, seeking to instill despair and confusion, chipping away at our resolve, whispering dreadful secrets that threatened to unravel our very spirits. But in that rising tide of dread, I fought to stay centered. Do not lose hope, I called out, the words forming a fierce barrier against the creeping despair. Remember why we fight. Remember the light. The flicker of camaraderie sparked in their eyes, and slowly, one by one, they lifted their hands, joining the glow that radiated from our entangled energies. As we united our strength, the light pulsed faster, shimmering with renewed vigor, as if it had drawn from our faith, our memories, those moments when hope had outshone despair. With every heartbeat, I could feel time slipping into a blurred rhythm, the boundary between reality and the shadows dissolving into chaos. The creature let out another earth-shattering howl as desperation lashed at its once terrifying form. Yet in its fury, something shifted. I realized that we weren't just fighting the shadows. We were rewriting their narrative. We were the authors of this moment. Let's end this, I yelled, feeling the energy surge again, sharper and clearer than before. With a swift motion, I guided my hands upward, sending a fountain of light cascading above us, illuminating every corner of the clearing. Banish the darkness, I cried, the words ripping through the air as if they were arrows, reconnoitering the very essence of the creature that had tormented us for far too long. To my surprise, the beam struck the ground with a brilliant flash, fracturing the surface as the shadows recoiled in anguish. A shockwave echoed outward, radiating through the trees and shattering the chains of despair that wrapped around the trapped souls, who began to stir, glimmers of light breaking through their hollow forms. You cannot silence us? I shouted again, the fear that had clutched at my heart loosening. The bond we forged together crackled with electricity, feeding off the desperation of the moment and producing a fierce glow that surged against the gathering shadows. The dark entity shook, its form flickering and distorting as pieces broke away and dissolved into the swirling winds. But the creatures of darkness were not without their own treachery. They unleashed a final, tempestuous wave that crashed through the light, a flash of freezing cold that clawed at my skin and threatened to drown my spirit. I gasped as a chill ran through my marrow, the scathing frost wrapping around my heart, but I refused to yield, refused to let it snuff out our light. The memories of joy, laughter, and love flooded my mind, grounding me against the onslaught of despair. Remember, I cried out to my friends, "Remember who we are!" As if beckoned by an invisible force, they responded eagerly. One by one, they stepped forward, calling upon their own strengths, their light intertwining with mine, weaving a tapestry of brilliance that defied the night. But the dark figure, relentless in its rage, summoned the shadows around it, a swirling mass that reshaped into a far more terrifying form, a creature of pure malice, glowing red eyes seething with vengeance. "You will regret this defiance," it hissed, inching closer, consuming the very air we breathed. In that moment of sheer peril, I locked eyes with the creature, feeling an intensity collide within me. More than fear, I felt anger for its manipulation, for the suffering it had caused. My hands trembled not with fear, but with purpose, and I would not back down. I lifted my chin, refusing to let it see weakness. "You won't take us?" I spat, feeling my heart race with the heat of determination. "We will shine brighter than your darkest shadow." With those final words, our light erupted in a surge of brilliance, flooding the clearing in an overwhelming glow. The dark entity staggered back, but just as I thought victory was within reach, it launched forward, clawed fingers aimed directly at me. Time slowed as I felt my heart pounding in my chest, the icy grasp of fear threatening to constrict my throat. For one gut-wrenching moment, I thought I'd be consumed, snuffed out like a brief flame in a tempest. But as the shadows surged, something surprising happened. The space around me warped, as if reality itself was pushing me to the side. In a blink, I found myself spinning away from its grasp, my vision swirling until I tumbled onto the ground with a loud thud. The disorientation was brief. As I regained my bearings, I could hear the cries of struggle around me, my friends united in their effort against the monster. The clearing was now a battlefield of light and darkness, swirling like a tornado, each competing force desperate to claim dominion over the night. "Get up!" I heard one of my friends shout through the chaos, and I fought through the dizziness, scrambling to rejoin the fight. There, amidst the glittering chaos, I saw the trapped souls swelling, their forms gaining solidity as they fed off the light we had become. They rushed around us like a whirlwind of shimmering streaks, caught in an exhilarating freedom that threatened to consume us all. "Together!" I yelled, adrenaline surging through my veins as I regained my footing. "We can't let it win!" The dark figure, now seething with rage, directed its fury at the released spirits. "You will not escape. You belong to the shadows." But within the radiant storm, the lost souls united, their ethereal forms outshining the encroaching darkness, overwhelming it with sheer determination. "We are free," they howled, bathing the clearing in warmth that sent ripples through the air, forcing the shadows to retreat. I stood firm, wounded but resolute, feeling the energy converging around me. "Let's finish this," I bellowed, feeling every fragment of courage enveloping me like armor. Together, igniting our luminous strength, we surged toward the dark entity, ready to break the hold it had on us once and for all. The moment felt surreal, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I focused on the twisted form of the creature. It twisted and writhed like a snake caught in its own shadows, its eyes burning with a depthless rage. I knew that this was our moment. The air crackled, electric, as we closed the distance, the pulsating glow of hope rallying behind us like an army rising for a battle. "Now!" I urged, feeling my heart race even faster. We hurled ourselves forward, fueled by our shared memories of joy, love, and those moments filled with light. As we approached, the shadows quivered, the darkness recoiling as if sensing its imminent demise. As we struck, an intense shattering blast erupted, illuminating the clearing. The creature howled, a sound that reverberated through my bones, piercing the very fabric of reality. I could see tremors ripple through the dark entity, as if it were being torn apart by a force unseen. Shreds of its essence flaked away, dissolving into the air, leaving behind this unsettling chill that gripped me. Yet, Deep down, I could feel remnants of its power, lurking just beyond the light. The whispers returned, creeping through the edges of my mind, vowing vengeance. You think you're safe? It sneered through the cacophony. You will regret this day. The shadows writhed violently, and in a flash, a swirling vortex formed, sucking up the very light we had created. I staggered, feeling the oppressive weight of despair trying to drag me down, its icy tendrils wrapping around my ankles like chains. I gritted my teeth, pushing against the intrusive thoughts that threatened to engulf me again. In the distance, I glimpsed my friends struggling against the encroaching darkness, their faces taut with fear. I saw one of them slip, caught in the vortex, but before I could react, a shadow darted towards them, a shape shifting and darkening until it became a gaping maw, hungry and ferocious. "No!" I screamed, lunging forward, my heart pounding with desperation. I reached out, but the shadows pulsed around them like angry rivers, and every step I took met invisible walls that pushed me back. "Fight it!" I cried, my voice shaking with urgency. Just beyond my grasp, my friend's eyes widened in terror, reflecting the dark monstrosity that loomed above. And then, in a moment of sheer horror, I watched as the dark figure engulfed them, swallowing them whole amidst a cloud of shadows and despair. A deathly silence followed, but the echoes of their cries rang in my ears. Fueled by fear for my friends, the heat of anger ignited within me, and I surged forward again despite the weight of dread slowing my limbs. "You'll pay for this," I shouted, feeling rage twist through me. "I won't let you take anyone else." In that moment, the remaining light blazed brighter, stretching out towards my lost friend, wherever they were. Every ounce of memory and warmth that connected us surged, forming a tether in the swirling chaos. I could feel them, hear their fragment of courage fighting even in the darkness, and it fueled me further. I lifted my hands, focusing my energy, willing every part of me to reach them. Letting go of my fear, I unleashed a torrent of light, a celestial burst that shot forth like an arrow, illuminating the shadows with brilliant clarity. The creature writhed, letting out a monstrous shriek that sliced through the air, echoing off the trees. The shadows splintered, quaking violently as pieces of it began to break away, sucked into the light. I could see faces flickering within the dark, whispering and crying out, trapped souls that were feeding the entity's power. Their anguish became clearer, their forms becoming half-formed shapes within the swirling mist. "No, we won't let you take them," I shouted, a surge of fierce empathy rising within me. My heart raced as I realized the souls longed for freedom, like lost children in a maze of darkness. With every ounce of strength, I guided the light, pushing it further. "Come back!" I yelled into the howling void, reaching for the shadowy forms. I felt the connection strengthening as they slowly began to gather as ethereal rays, desperately breaking away from the dark entity's grasp. But the creature was relentless. As it coiled back, a dark storm curve formed, a seething mass of shadows swirling dangerously close. I realized its power was intertwining with my fears again, trying to tear apart my focus as it shot tendrils of darkness towards me. Suddenly, a familiar face emerged out of the dark mass within the chaos. A fleeting silhouette of my friend, flickering like a candle in the wind. "Help me!" they screamed, their voice echoing in the void, filled with unmistakable desperation. "Hold on!" I cried, extending my arm towards them. My heart ached fiercely as I fought against the shadows pulling them away. "I'm coming!" The dark figure shrieked in defiance, a furious sound that rattled through my bones, and in a burst of malevolence, it twisted, reaching towards me like a predator lurching towards its prey. Shadows lashed out, striking wildly, cold and sharp. They swept across me, dimming the pulsing light, and I felt my resolve shaking. But I wouldn't let it win. I could hear my heart beat in time with the struggle, each pulse a reminder of the light within. I clenched my fists, summoning every ounce of courage and warmth from those around me. Together, I bellowed, pushing the energy into a beacon that glowed fiercely. The light erupted once more, a blinding flare against the sinister shadows. The creature faltered, shrieking as the tendrils disconnected from their hold. I felt the tether between my heart and my friend strengthen, wrapping around them like an ethereal lifeline, pulling them toward the light. "Come on," I yelled. "Reach for me." And, as if my voice crackled through the shadows, their form began shifting, gravitating toward the light, glowing faintly at first, then radiating brightly as they surged closer. The shadows screamed in rage, retreating as their anchor disintegrated into luminous fragments. But just as we began to separate the darkness from its damage, the creature lashed out with one final, frenzied attack. The air began to swirl violently, ripping through the clearing, as a chilling wind enveloped us, transforming into a howling gale that pulled at my clothes and tugged me dangerously back toward the dark abyss. "No, not again!" I shouted, digging my heels into the ground, straining against the invisible force that sought to drag me under. "I won't let it take me." I gathered all my strength, and from deep within, I summoned those cherished moments we had shared. Laughter around the campfire, the warmth of friendship, the light of hope. It all coalesced into a singular thought. "Fight back!" I yelled to my friends, urging them to hold on, to believe. Together, we formed a wall of unyielding light, pushing through the darkness with all our might. The shadow creature screeched once more, writhing with furious intent. Its form dissipated as sparks of our combined light repelled its surge. The encroaching darkness trembled, and with one desperate thrust, I dove forward, reaching for that flickering shadow, determined to pull my friend back. "Grab my hand!" I shouted, the distance closing in the throes of the battle. The light flared, illuminating everything around us. And just as the creature lunged for one last attack, darkness crashed against our radiant barrier. I could feel the terror closing in around my heart, a tight knot of fear and determination, fighting for control. But that fear became clarity as I saw my friend's desperate grasp reach out, their fingers finally catching mine. In that moment, against the chaotic surge, our bond became unbreakable, and with a tremendous pull, I yanked them back, feeling a rush of warmth. The creature howled, tearing its essence apart, howling in pain as it disintegrated around us. The shadows retreated, swirling away into the night, leaving behind only echoes of its desolation. Panting, I looked at my friends, their eyes wide with disbelief and cautious hope. The clearing sparkled with remnants of light, dancing softly upon the gentle breeze as the fractured pieces of the dark entity disappeared into the equivalent of ghosts. I felt tears prick at my eyes, relief flooding through me as the weight of darkness lifted. We had done it. We had faced the abyss and survived. Yet, amid the victories, a lingering, unsettling feeling crept into my mind, the knowledge that the shadows could always return. But standing there, united, I couldn't dwell on that now. I felt the warmth of my friends beside me, the flicker of hope bending against the dark. As the last remnants of the struggle faded, it became clear that together we could face whatever would come next. "We need to get out of here," I said quietly, glancing back at the clearing that held both our fears and our triumphs. They nodded, still shaken but resolute. I turned, glancing back at the shadowy remnants, making sure they wouldn't follow. As we stepped cautiously away, I wondered if this experience would remain only a memory or if the shadows would rise again one day, more fearsome than before. But with each step away, I could feel the bond of light igniting within us, illuminating our path forward, each of us stronger, braver, and more connected than ever before. We stepped cautiously away, glancing over our shoulders as if the shadows might still reach out and snatch us back into their depths. The forest was eerily quiet now, a silence filled with the weight of what had just happened. The vibrant colors of dawn began to break through the trees, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, yet I couldn't shake the sense of dread that clung to me like a second skin. As we moved further from the clearing, I felt an unsettling chill creep back into the air. It was as if the shadows had left a residue, an unshakable presence that hung over us. I glanced at my friends, their faces reflecting a mixture of relief and fear, each of us knowing that the darkness had not been defeated. It had merely retreated. The path ahead twisted deeper into the woods, winding alongside gnarled trees that loomed like dark sentinels, watching our every step. My footsteps echoed, the sound amplifying in the emptiness, sending prickles down my spine. I couldn't help but feel that we were being followed, as if invisible eyes traced our movements, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Did you feel that?" I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. The others exchanged glances, their expressions clouding with uncertainty. "It's probably just the aftereffects," one said, trying to shake off the tension. But I could see the tremor in their hands, know they felt it too. With each step, the forest seemed to close in around us, the air thickening with apprehension. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, warped by the flickering light of dawn. The laughter of birds felt muffled, distant, like a haunting melody just beyond reach. I strained my senses, every rustle and crack sending my heart racing, reminding me that the darkness could easily seep back in, leaving us vulnerable without notice. Suddenly, we heard it. A low, guttural growl reverberated through the trees, drowning out even the soft whispers of the wind. The sound sent a shockwave of fear racing through my veins, freezing me in place. My pulse thundered in my ears as I exchanged frantic looks with my friends. "What was that?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. As if in response to my question, the growl escalated into a spine-chilling snarl, echoing ominously. I turned, scanning the surroundings, every shadow morphing into something grotesque. The underbrush crackled, and for a moment, everything felt suspended in a breathless pause. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, eerily tall and cloaked in darkness, with eyes that glinted like dying embers. My breath caught, fear wrapping like a vice around my throat. It looked at us, then tilted its head, as if studying our terrified faces, savoring our fear like a fine meal. "We need to run," I shouted, my instincts kicking in. I spun on my heel, urging my friends to follow. But the creature moved with a supernatural swiftness, blocking our path. Its shape seemed to flicker, limbs elongating and twisting as it approached. The chill of the air iced around us, suffocating and thick with terror. I could feel its gaze boring into me, an oppressive force teasing the edges of my mind. "Stay together," I screamed, but the fear splintered us. One friend stumbled back, their eyes wide with panic, and in that instant I knew. This was a game for the dark entity, an amusement to watch us scramble, to relish in our disarray. Without thinking, I lunged forward, shoving my friend toward the trees. But the earth beneath us shook violently. Roots erupted from the ground, twisting and snarling like serpents, wrapping around my legs, holding me in place. Panic surged through me as I struggled against the tightening grip, my heart racing wildly. "Help me!" I cried, but the shadows closed in. The creature let out a low, eerie chuckle that sent shivers down my spine, a sound reminiscent of cracking ice. It enjoyed this. It thrived on our fear. I felt hysteria clawing in my throat, but I forced it down, remembering the light we had worked so hard to maintain. "We can't let it win," I thought fiercely. Gathering every ounce of willpower, I pushed outwards, summoning the warm energy that had once surged through me. With a mighty roar, I thrust my arms forward, feeling the light burst from within, illuminating the darkness around us. The tendrils recoiled, startled, and I seized the moment. "Run!" I yelled to my friends, desperately trying to free myself and guide them to safety. The creature screeched, outraged, as the shadows faltered under my newfound strength. I did not wait to see if my friends followed. I wrenched my legs free and sprinted deeper into the woods, adrenaline propelling me forward as the world spiraled in and out of focus. With each pounding step, the forest morphed into a twisting nightmare, the branches clawing at me like skeletal fingers. The air thickened with malice, whispering secrets that tugged at the corners of my mind. Regret? Panic? The shadows seemed to call out to me, coaxing me back into their embrace. I stumbled into a clearing, heart racing, scanning the perimeter for my friends. They hadn't followed yet, I realized with a sickening twist of my stomach. Just then, I caught a glimpse of movement. My other friends skidding in behind me, their face ashen. There's something out there. They panted, wide-eyed with terror. Before I could respond, the shadows lurked at the edge of the clearing, swirling ominously like a gathering storm. They slid between the trees, creeping closer, creating a suffocating wall around us. "We need to find a way out," I shouted. My voice sounded brave, but inside I was terrified, each heartbeat a reminder that we were still trapped. Close to the edge of fear, I felt a dark force rising again, clawing at my resolve, trying to root me in place. "Stay together," I urged, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The growl returned, louder this time, vibrating through my chest as the ground trembled beneath our feet. Suddenly, the light flickered, like a candle in a tempest. Panic surged as the shadows surged forward, reaching hungrily, trying to envelop us once more. "We must fight," I screamed, clenching my fists in defiance. In the depths of that darkness, I could feel the weight of despair pressing down around me, squeezing the very breath from my lungs. The dread coiled tightly, sending tendrils of fear snaking into my mind, trying to unearth my deepest insecurities. I could see ghostly figures in the edges of my vision, the faces of those lost, reminding me of my failures and doubts. "I won't give in," I shouted, clutching my heart in determination. It was a battle for my very soul. Just then, I felt it, a small warmth at the back of my neck, like the soft touch of sunlight breaking through a storm. I turned, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw my other friend rally to my side. Their hands shot toward me, building a wall of light, battling back against the sinister shadows. As our hands met, the energy surged again, stronger and fiercer. The shadows screeched, recoiling against our collective light. The clearing sparkled with power, illuminating the ominous figures that lurked in the edges. Then, in a terrifying rush, the darkness retreated, scattering momentarily as the pulse of our light grew overwhelming. Yet, I knew it could come back. This wasn't over. "Keep pushing," I urged my friends, feeling the strength of our combined light driving back the encroaching shadows. It was exhilarating, but terrifying at the same time. The brightness surrounding us shimmered with a fragile power, illuminating the forest suffused with creeping darkness. Despite our growing light, the shadows twisted ominously, shifting and mingling like smoke escaping from a dying fire. Their menacing forms flitted and danced, almost playfully, as if they were toying with us, daring us to challenge their dominion. I could see vague figures within the dark, their eyes filled with fear and anguish. They seemed to reach out, imploring us to set them free. "Don't look at them," I shouted, grasping the hands of my friends tightly, the warmth of their energy coursing through me. "They'll try to pull you back." The thought of being lost in that darkness resonated through me, a reminder of the grip it had before. Suddenly, one friend faltered, their eyes wide, staring into the swirling shadows. "I can hear them," they whispered, trembling. "They want us to come closer. They want us to join them." A chill ran down my spine, and I felt a surge of dread at what was happening. "No," I insisted, shaking my head fiercely. "We can't listen to them. Focus on the light. Remember our victory." Yet, the temptation lingered. The shadows rippled like a shroud around us, seductive in their sway. I could almost hear the whispers now, a soft chorus beckoning me, promising peace, alleviation from the struggle. "Join us," they sang, like a haunting lullaby echoing through the rustling branches. Before I knew it, I was stepping towards them, my body moving of its own accord, captivated by the promises whispered into my mind. I felt a warmth inside, something alluring that drew me closer, almost comforting. But just then, a jolt of clarity snapped me back. "No, I won't give in," I shouted, squeezing my eyes shut, recalling the faces of those I cared about. In that moment, everything shifted. The light around us flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat, and I could feel the shadows tensing, biding their time. I opened my eyes, holding tightly to my friends, urging them with all my strength to fight the despair. "We have to press forward. We had them on the run. We can't let them regroup." Terror surged through the woods as the shadows began to swirl again, a dark cyclone surrounding us, the growls and whispers growing louder. My heart raced, pounding so hard I feared it might burst. The encroaching darkness felt alive, hungry for the fear it elicited. The trees creaked ominously overhead, their branches arching like skeletal hands reaching for us. In the chaos, I spotted a flickering light in the distance, a faint glow seeping through the trees. It pulsed like a beacon, drawing me in, offering a way out of this nightmare. "Over there," I shouted, pointing toward the glimmering promise of safety. "We can make it." I broke into a run, dragging my friends behind me, desperate to reach the light before the shadows caught up. The underbrush crackled beneath our feet, the raspy whispers of the darkness clawing at our minds. The flickering light grew brighter, illuminating the path ahead, but the shadows churned angrily, as if sensing our escape. Breathless, we pushed forward, each step feeling heavier than the last. Just when it seemed the darkness might engulf us, a bright pulse erupted from the light, momentarily pushing the shadows back, giving us a small window of hope. But then it faded, swallowed once again by the relentless dark. "It's too far," one friend gasped, stumbling. But I couldn't let despair take hold. "Keep going. We're almost there." Just as we veered toward the shimmer, the forest erupted with chaos. The ground shook violently. Roots clawed their way out like twisted fingers, trying to ensnare us. I could feel panic rising as I narrowly avoided them, my heart racing as shadows lunged forward, snapping in the air. As we reached the edge of the clearing, it opened up into an expanse of misty light swirling with luminescent colors. An otherworldly sight, but unsettling. "What is that?" a friend whispered, eyes wide. The beautiful glow felt like a trap, something waiting to entrap us in its beauty. But the shadows surged closer, darkness consuming the trees around us, threatening to cut off our path. My instincts screamed to enter the light, to dive into its embrace. "Trust the light," I shouted, even as doubts clouded my mind. We charged ahead, the ominous sounds closing in, a cacophony of growls and shrieks filling the air around us. Just as we reached the edge of the brilliant glow, time seemed to slow, and I felt an intense connection to the light, as if it recognized the fear and pain we had endured. Another wave of shadows crashed toward us, sweeping me backwards, threatening to pull me into their depths. I reached out, grasping my friends' hands tightly, feeling their warmth grounding me as I summoned the strength within. I couldn't lose them to this evil. The glow intensified, a blinding flash erupting around us as I drew on that connection. "Now!" I yelled with every ounce of energy. Together, the shadows recoiled, howling in rage as our light surged forth. We jumped into the radiant glow, feeling a surge of warmth and security envelop us. For a brief moment, I felt hope flood through my veins, a promise of safety. But then, everything turned dark. The glow extinguished in an instant, leaving us stumbling in blackness. My heart dropped as I shouted, "No! Where are we?" Panic seized me as I sought out my friends, their voices lost in the void. "Can you hear me?" I called out, dread pooling in my gut. A faint rustling echoed nearby, but the darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. I could feel the shadows shift around me, creeping back, intently watching, waiting for the moment when fear would seize me. I steadied my breath, focused on calming the rising tide of terror, and willed my friend's presence back. Stay close. I shouted into the inky blackness, trying to quell the panic rising in my chest. The forest felt treacherous, and while I could sense the hollow eyes lurking, I fought against the suffocating grip of despair urging me to give in. I turned slowly, a shiver running down my spine as footsteps echoed behind me. "Where are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The footsteps paused. Then there was a low, mocking laugh, a sound that froze me in my tracks. "Those who wander into my darkness never leave," the shadows hissed. The voice was cold, taunting. It sent an icy chill through me. I clenched my fists, forcing back the rising wave of fear. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted defiantly, even as doubt whispered in the back of my mind. The laughter grew louder. "You don't even know what fear is," it said, slithering away like smoke in the night. I felt my heart pound steadily, eclipsed only by the sheer terror of the unseen threat around us. My breath quickened as I struggled to remember that light. I couldn't give in to this darkness, couldn't surrender to the shadow's deceit. In the oppressive silence, my heart thundered as I called out again. "We need to find each other." Clinging to that flicker of hope, I focused the light I could still sense, reaching for my friends, holding on to the belief that we could forge a path together through this nightmare. And then, a faint glow started to emerge again, flickering in the distance like a will-o'-the-wisp. "Guys, over here!" I shouted, scrambling toward it, desperate to rally my friends and escape this purgatorial abyss. The shadows hissed angrily as the flickering grew brighter, illuminating twisted branches and grotesque shapes, and I sprinted forward, compelled by an almost primal instinct to survive. "This way!" Just as I reached the edge, the shadows lunged for me, snapping viciously as I barely evaded their grasp, diving towards the burgeoning light. In that moment of heightened terror, I promised myself I would not just run from fear. I would confront it, unravel its hold over me. I could feel the warmth of that flickering light drawing closer, pulling me in as if it could sense my desperation. With my heart racing, I surged forward, every shadow behind me writhing in agony as they recoiled from the emerging brilliance. I had to reach it. I had to escape the grasp of darkness that threatened to consume me whole. As the light grew brighter, its warmth washed over me, momentarily chasing away the oppressive chill. I felt a renewed sense of hope invigorating my steps, the piercing fear ebbing into a manageable pulse of adrenaline. But just as I reached out toward that brilliant glow, it flickered violently, a pulse of energy catching me off guard. I stumbled, falling to the ground, the shadows inching closer, their cold breath wrapping around me. The laughter echoed again, now mixed with shouting and cries, a cacophony that chilled me to the core. Outer voices twisted into distorted shrieks, amplifying my fear as the shadows painted grotesque images on the edges of my mind. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the sounds away. "This can't be it. I'm stronger than this," I thought desperately, fighting against the rising tide of despair. Suddenly, I felt a hand grasp mine, cold, clammy, and tugging me deeper into despair. I blinked, seeing a figure emerge from the dark, their face obscured in shadow. "You can't escape," they whispered, their voice a honeyed poison, alluring and terrifying all at once. An instinctual urge to pull away shot through me, but my legs felt heavy, as if tethered to the ground. "Let me go!" I screamed, the panic surging as I felt other hands grabbing at my limbs, pulling me toward the shadows. "Please!" But their fingers tightened like a vice, and the laughter of the shadows echoed in my ears, mocking my desperate plight. My heart raced, a primal fear pushing me to fight, but it felt hopeless against the press of the darkness around me. Just as despair threatened to consume me, I caught sight of the light again, glimmering bravely in the distance. Even from here, it felt alive, pulsing with energy, daring me to trust it. I remembered my friends, our connection, the light we had fought together. Drawing on every ounce of willpower, I screamed out, "I won't be lost. I choose the light." With a surge, I pulled free from the icy grip and sprinted toward that beacon, the darkness writhing behind me, howling in frustration. I felt the heat from the light envelop me. I dove head first into it, embracing the warmth like a lifeline. The world ignited around me with dazzling colors, thundering waves pulsing with energy. As I crossed the threshold, the shadows cried out in fury, the sound reverberating through the air like shattering glass. The light grew blindingly bright, and for an instant, I felt weightless, a release from the torment, a surrender to something far more potent than the darkness that had tried to shackle me. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth engulf me, believing with every fiber of my being that I was safe. But the darkness didn't vanish. In the enlightenment, I could still hear the haunting whispers, feel the tug of their sinister reach. "You'll always be part of us," they hissed, slithering through my mind, a vile reminder that the shadows lingered. I fought to push those thoughts away, focusing instead on the light inside me that sparkled like stars. Then slowly I opened my eyes. The light was no longer blinding, but rather a soft, gentle glow surrounding me, driving away the shadows creeping at the edges. I was in a clearing, a beautiful sanctuary filled with glowing flowers and animals basking in harmony. It felt surreal, and I marveled at how everything was transformed. A lingering chill remained, but it was quieter here, a distant echo. Yet, even in this serene moment, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the darkness was still lurking just outside my view, waiting patiently for a moment of weakness. I looked around, aware now that this was not simply an escape, but a choice to remember the darkness without becoming part of it. I couldn't let myself forget the terror of those shadows that had tried to consume me. I had survived, and while the remnants of fear would always be with me, I was no longer bound. My heart filled with gratitude for the light that had led me back to safety. I turned away from the darkness, finally allowing myself to embrace the beauty surrounding me, allowing the blooming life to fill my spirit with hope. I closed my eyes, letting the beauty wash over me. The terrifying darkness was out there, waiting, but I had found the strength to choose the light. It no longer defined me. It was simply a part of my story, a lesson learned. And with that, I vowed to carry that light within me, knowing it was the power I needed to face whatever lay ahead. I closed my eyes, letting the beauty wash over me. But even as the light surrounded me, I could feel a gnawing discomfort in my gut. The shadows had not given up. I could sense them lurking just outside my vision, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. The feeling was like being watched, the kind of eerie awareness that sends chills racing down your spine. As I took a hesitant step forward into the clearing, the cheerful colors of the glowing flowers began to fade. Instead of vibrant hues, muted tones of gray and black snaked through the garden like creeping vines of fear. My breath quickened. The serenity of the place, once inviting, now felt more like a cruel joke played by the shadows. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves, carrying with it soft whispers that sounded almost like my name. "Come back to us, join us." It was as if the darkness was trying to seduce me again, its sweet promises wrapping around me like a shroud. I shook my head, feeling the sweat gather at my temples, panic gnawing at my resolve. I had fought too hard to let the shadows take control again. But the whispers grew louder, insistent, promising safety and comfort if I would only turn away from the light. "Get away!" I shouted, forcing myself to move deeper into the clearing, hoping to escape the echoing voices. But as I walked, the flowers wilted and shivered, their vibrant light slowly dimming until they appeared like dull specters. A knot of dread twisted tighter in my stomach. The dark whispers clawed at my sanity, wrapping around my mind like chains, reminding me of the depths I had escaped and how easily I could return. Just when I thought I could break free, a sudden chill swept through the air, freezing me in place. Shadows poured into the clearing like a thick fog, sweeping toward me as if feeling my presence. My heart raced as I turned to flee, but the path had shifted. The once inviting space morphed into a maze of darkened corners, and I was lost in a sea of blackness. I could sense the shadows closing in, the malicious intent palpable in the air. "Stay away!" I screamed, adrenaline fueling my escape. But with every turn I took, I felt their presence looming closer. It was as if the very ground beneath me was alive, shifting and writhing like a creature eager to consume me. I stumbled against a tree, its bark twisted and gnarled, the branches looming like skeletal hands reaching for me. The shadows pressed in from all sides, their whispers turning into a cacophony of laughter, mocking my fear as they began to claw at my sanity. Just then, flickering lights appeared at the edges of my vision, darting like fireflies. I rushed toward them, hoping they offered a way out of this nightmare. But as I drew closer, I realized they were not fireflies, but instead eyes, glowing with hunger and malice, watching my every move. They belonged to twisted creatures hiding in the shadows, their forms shifting unnaturally as if they were part of the darkness itself. The sight was enough to freeze my blood. I was not in a sanctuary after all. I had stumbled right into their lair. How many had they lured here like me, only to be consumed by despair? A wave of nausea washed over me, the fear curling tightly around my throat. I turned, ready to run, but there was no safe path. The creatures were all around, blocking every exit. Panic surged as I backed away, bumping into the twisted tree again. Shadows flicked around the corner of my vision, darting in and out, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their eyes glowed like embers in the night, and a deep growl emanated from the throng. I pressed my back against the rough bark, feeling as if the tree itself was warning me of the danger. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound fierce. As I yelled, the shadows shrieked, a sound that pierced the air like a cry for help turned foul. The cacophony reverberated in my mind, drowning out all reason, mixing in with their tempting whispers. The once soothing light was now transformed into a malevolent force, blinding me. With a deep breath, I closed my eyes tightly, trying to center my thoughts. This wasn't happening again. I would not let the darkness win. Summoning every ounce of strength, I pushed away from the tree, breaking free of its grasp, and darted forward into the maelstrom of terror. The shadows lunged at me, clawing at my clothes, trying to tear me apart. I felt their icy fingers grazing my skin, sending shards of panic through my being. "No, no!" I screamed again, the words a chant to push me forward. I ran desperately, weaving through the dark shapes, searching for that flickering light somewhere ahead, hoping it'd guide me back to safety. But just as I thought I was gaining some distance, a cold wind whipped through the clearing, and I stumbled, falling hard onto the ground. The darkness cascaded over me, pulling my limbs, wrapping around me like chains. I clawed at the earth desperately, fighting against the oppressive pressure holding me down. "Help!" I cried, feeling my voice dissolve into the void, swallowed by the consuming darkness. But in the depths of my despair, something deep inside me flared to life. It was the flicker of that luminous fire I had found before, the connection to my friends, the light within that had brought me this far. I grasped onto that feeling, channeling every ounce of inner strength. "You can't have me!" I screamed, pulling from deep within until I felt the energy surge through my body. That flicker exploded into blinding light, erupting from my very core. It spread outwards like a shockwave, illuminating the dark mist and searing the shadows momentarily. They shrieked in agony, stumbling back as I rose from the ground, empowered by that inner glow. I had become the light, and the darkness recoiled in horror as I pushed forward, breaking free from their grasp. My heart raced as I vowed to escape this nightmare once and for all. I turned and ran, the glowing warmth guiding me now, the shadows losing their hold, their cries fading into despair. I focused on that warmth until finally, I burst into another clearing bathed in light. a world untouched by the malevolent presence that had tormented me. Gasping for breath, I fell to my knees, overwhelmed with relief. The garden here bloomed brightly, unfurling tons of colors and life, purring with contentment. But as I looked around, I recognized a few familiar faces blooming among the flowers, their trapped expressions mirroring my own from moments before. Realization sank in like a stone. I'm not free, not yet. I breathed, dread creeping into my chest. The shadows might be gone, but they were always lurking, always waiting. I knew now I must remain vigilant, for the darkness never truly dissipates. It lives within the corners of the mind, feeding off fear and feeding on sorrow. I'd escaped this time, but I could still hear the faint whispers, the soft seduction of shadows promising solace. And though the light was mine to carry, I knew I had to pass on the courage to others, to help them navigate through those treacherous paths before darkness could claim them as well. I took a moment to catch my breath among the vibrant flowers, but my mind raced with the reality that I still wasn't safe. The euphoria of escaping the shadows was washing away, replaced with the cold grip of uncertainty. Those familiar faces surrounded me, their expressions frozen in a mix of fear and longing. There was something unsettling about their stillness, like they were waiting for something to happen, or for someone to come back. I stood slowly, scanning the surroundings. The brilliant colors and warming light felt like a facade, masking a sinister undertone. If those who had once been lost were still trapped here, it meant that the shadows were not as easily banished as I hoped. A murmur of fear pulsed through me. "Why are you all so quiet?" I called out, my voice echoing softly against the blooming flowers. "Are you stuck?" One face twisted in anguish, their eyes pleading. "We were once like you," they whispered, their voice trembling. "We thought we had escaped, but they always find a way back." A chill washed over me as I processed their words. If I wasn't careful, I could easily become just like them, another lost soul among the cursed. But I had fought hard to break free. I wouldn't surrender now. I took a step toward them, but the ground shifted unnaturally beneath my feet. The vibrant flowers around me began to wilt, slowly losing their colors, as shadows crept along, slithering through the dirt like snakes of darkness. "No, not again," I yelled, stumbling backward as panic sent my heart racing. The faces of the trapped grew hazy, their features distorting into grotesque masks of despair, stretching and bending until they became unrecognizable. "Leave us," one screamed, and the others joined in, their voices combining into a chilling symphony of torment, rising and falling like the cries of the damned. The sight of them fading into the dark was unbearable, pulling at the strings of my heart as I realized they were being consumed once more. I turned to run, but the shadows surged forward, and the ground beneath me quaked violently. It felt like I was falling through the earth, falling into an abyss where darkness reigned. My feet hit the ground in a chaotic rush, pushing forward blindly, desperately wanting to escape these wretched souls and the looming shadows. But everywhere I turned was suffocating darkness. The laughing whispers grew louder, echoing in my ears, and the shadows clawed at my heels, eager to drag me back into their clutches. They called my name, swirling around me like an unholy wind, shrill and relentless, pulling me closer to the edge of insanity. "Leave me alone," I cried, swinging my arms in a desperate attempt to fend them off. I pushed against the shadows, feeling their icy tendrils slipping through my fingers, chilling my skin. Each waft brought memories from previous fears, drowning me in nostalgia and regret as I fought to reclaim my sense of self. Suddenly, I hesitated, sensing something, a pulsing energy that cut through the darkness. It was a brilliant light flickering somewhere ahead. Igniting within me was a flicker of determination, urging me to move toward it. "I can do this," I thought. "I won't give in. I choose to face the light." With unwavering resolve, I sprinted forward, ignoring the grasp of the shadows clawing at my back. The darkness hissed as I pushed against it, a fierce glow in my heart guiding my way. The shrieks intensified, echoing all around me, but their sounds blended into an exhilarating rhythm that fueled my every move. Just as I thought I could break free, I was hit with a sudden wave of sorrow, washing over me like ice-cold water. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing as images of despair flashed before my eyes. Each one was heavier than the last. Lost dreams, crushed hopes, and the tormented whispers of those who had come before me. "Join us," they beckoned. "We can end this together." It was an enticing promise that threatened to obliterate my will. I gasped, shaking my head violently as I fought back against the wave trying to drown me. "No, I won't be like you," I shouted defiantly, forcing every ounce of strength I had into my legs. The flickering light grew brighter again as I threw myself toward it. I could feel the warmth enveloping me once more, pushing back the cold shadows working tirelessly to reclaim me. With a final burst of energy, I leaped toward the warm glow, reaching blindly, praying that it would be my salvation. My fingers brushed something solid just as I was struck by a force more powerful than I ever imagined. The darkness howled, shrieking with rage as I plunged into the light. Suddenly, I was surrounded by sparkles, the ethereal warmth wrapping around me, lifting the weight of despair from my shoulders. I was enveloped in a cocoon of brilliance, and my heart soared at the comforting presence. I was safe, but the serenity was fleeting. I could feel the shadows still lingering somewhere, just beyond the light. They whispered from the edges, their dark intentions brewing, waiting for the moment when I would falter. "What now?" I murmured, glancing around the radiant space. The light shifted gently, illuminating the path ahead. But looking back, I saw the shadows still lingering right where I had left them, patiently waiting, their hungry eyes gleaming with anticipation. A reminder of my near defeat. "I won't let you take me," I whispered fiercely, my voice steadier than before. I had tasted fear and despair, felt their icy breath on my skin. I was not the same person who had entered the darkness. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward into the light, determined to find a new way to keep fighting against the shadows. I would find a way to not only face my fears, but to ensure that those lost souls wouldn't have to suffer in silence. The road ahead seemed endless, but I would embrace the journey, facing what lay ahead with every ounce of courage. Shadows may always lurk, but I had the strength to resist their pull. With each step, the light grew brighter, illuminating the darkness around me. For the first time, I felt hope bloom inside my chest, and I knew this wasn't the end of the story, only a new chapter beginning. With each step, the light grew brighter, illuminating the darkness around me. I felt a surge of hope, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The shadows still loomed, their whispers curling around my mind like smoke, reminding me of their presence, reminding me that they wouldn't simply vanish. As I ventured deeper into this glowing realm, the beauty of it started changing. The flowers, once vibrant and inviting, curled at the edges, leaving behind wilted petals that crumbled at the slightest touch. The air thickened, becoming heavy with a cloying sweetness that masked a growing sense of dread. The warmth I once felt began to cool, and a bone-chilling wind swept through the clearing, sending a shiver down my spine. Each breath I took felt laced with tension, a reminder that this place wasn't safe either. I looked around, searching for something, anything, that would lead me back to the warmth I had experienced earlier. But instead of comfort, I was met with an unsettling silence. Then I heard it, a soft rustling in the bushes behind me. The sound was barely there at first, like a whispered secret I was not meant to hear. I quickly turned, scanning the area, but nothing moved. Just shadows. They lay thick among the underbrush, twisting in on themselves as if they were alive, waiting for an opportune moment to strike. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking slightly. The rustling grew louder, and my heart raced at the thought of what could emerge. I took a cautious step back, my instincts screaming at me to flee. But I couldn't just run. I had to know what lurked in the darkness behind me. Clenching my fists, I approached the edge of the bushes. The light ahead felt so distant, almost like a dream, while the shadows whispered taunts, pulling me back into their clutches. "Come closer," they hissed softly. "You can't escape us." Suddenly, the bushes parted, and a figure stepped into the dim light. It was a person, or at least it had once been. The skin was pale as moonlight, yet the eyes were dark and empty, reflecting nothing but the void of despair. There was a haunting smile plastered on its face, as if frozen in time, a mask of joy that had long since faded. "Help me," it croaked, its voice rasping like dry leaves, sending chills down my spine. "I've been waiting for so long. They won't let me go." Panic rose within me, realizing the entity before me was another lost soul, trapped in this realm just like those I had seen earlier. It stepped closer, and I could see that its body was almost translucent, unable to exist fully in either world. I took a step back, fear clawing at my throat. "What do you want from me?" "I can show you the way," it whispered, and for a moment, I was tempted. What if it really could guide me to safety? The thought flickered through my mind, but the shadows clinging to the edges told a different story. They hissed, warning me in unison, "Don't trust it. It will steal your light." Suddenly, the smile on the figure's face faded, replaced by a look of anguish. "No, don't listen to them," it shouted. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to be free." I turned to where the shadows writhed, their whispers growing louder, drowning out the figure's pleas. I felt as if they were draining the hope from the air, filling the space with despair. "Get away from me!" I yelled, fighting against the tide of fear rising inside. In an instant, the figure lunged at me, its hand reaching out as it screamed, "You can't leave. You belong with us." I stumbled back, falling to the ground, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. The shadows lunged towards me, illuminating the figure in a ghastly light. I could see its true form now, hollow and decayed, a mockery of what it once was. Despair washed over me once again, threatening to drag me under. With renewed determination, I scrambled to my feet, glancing at the luminous glow still beckoning me in the distance. "I won't be taken," I shouted, steadying myself. The path was still there. I could feel it calling me, urging me forward. Without another glance back, I dashed toward the light, the figure's cries echoing behind me in the void. As I ran, the shadows reached out, trying to pull me back, but I focused on the warmth growing within me, pushing back against their grasp. "Keep going. Don't stop," I urged myself, my heart pounding in rhythm with my footsteps. The darkness growled, a low rumble that sent chills coursing through me, filling my head with doubt. But each footfall brought the radiant light closer, the swirling shadows becoming more frantic as I resisted their pull. Just as I thought I was breaking free, the shadows roared, and a powerful gust of wind surged through the clearing, throwing me off balance. I staggered, barely catching my footing, but I couldn't afford to lose my momentum. With a burst of adrenaline, I plunged forward, feeling the sweet promise of light envelop me as I dove into the glowing aura. The shadows screamed in rage, their voices melding into a single cacophony of fury that echoed all around. I launched myself into the light, enveloped in its warmth. Finally, I felt a sense of safety, but it was fleeting. Emerging from the burst of light, I found myself in another strange place entirely. The surroundings had changed once more, the brightness fading into a landscape filled with twisted trees and dense fog. The eerie silence was oppressive, wrapping around me like a shroud, and I could sense that the shadows were still lurking, waiting for an opportunity to pounce. I gripped my arm, a shiver running down my spine, trying to quiet the fear that had settled in. I looked around, straining to see through the mist, but all I could make out were vague silhouettes shifting just beyond the range of my vision. The air crackled with tension, and the feeling of being watched returned, deeper this time, as if something sinister was taking notice of my presence. My heart raced as I moved cautiously forward, the fog thickening around me. I was acutely aware of every sound: the rustle of leaves, the distant echo of something unseen moving through the brush. Would I make it through this new nightmare? Suddenly, a flash of light caught my eye through the mists. It pulsated rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Instinctively, I felt drawn to it, the light promising another source of hope. But I also felt the shadows closing in, a chill creeping along my spine. I had to stay focused. I couldn't let them pull me away from the path to freedom. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and pressed forward, determined to discover the mystery behind that light. The shadows hissed, their whispers now a menacing growl, warning me of the dangers that lay ahead. But seeing that flickering glow push me on, the thought of escape urging me forward into the eerie darkness that still attempted to claim me.